It's now 6:30.
Thank you, Jason. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Cunningham Township Board for Monday, October 11th, 2021. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Miss Wu,
Here.
Mr. Evans, Miss Hersey,
Here.
Miss Colasetti,
Here.
Miss Bishop,
Here.
Miss Wilkin,
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Here.
Mayor Marlin,
Here.
Miss Shenoweth,
Present.
Mr. Williams.
Here.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from several meetings, and I'll read them. It's April 12th, 2021, June 14th, 2021 special meeting, June 21st, 2021 public hearing and special meeting, July 12th, 2021, August 9th, 2021 public hearing and meeting, and September 13th, 2021. Could I have a motion for approval?
I'll move approval. I'll second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Sharice. Any discussion? Grace?
Thank you. Can we go through these one by one? Would that make more sense? Because I do have a few on almost all of them, I think.
Sure. April 12th, anything for that one?
Oops, mine got out of order. I thought I was in order.
Could I ask a question? Did you find it? I was going to ask if I could ask a question while you were looking. Is it okay if I jump in for a sec?
Yes, please.
I'm a little unclear on this because this was before many of us were seated. So I'm wondering a little bit about the process, because I will say, at least for myself, that I haven't had a chance to go back and rewatch that meeting and don't feel comfortable voting on it since I wasn't present without reviewing that. If, like, what would be the best process for those of us who might feel that way?
I'd have to defer to Phyllis on that one.
It's actually up to you whether you want to vote on those or not. You can abstain from the ones that you don't feel comfortable making a choice over. But the information that is in the minutes that you have before you that you've seen is exactly what went on in the meeting. The only thing that's different is that we did not do verbatim, which means every word. So we just kind of summarized the things that was said. So, but you can vote for it or against it or say nothing.
Okay, thank you.
And that would affect the April 12th meeting. The other meetings were after you were seated.
Yes.
Okay. Grace, did you have individual comments?
Yes. So sorry, I found my April one. I don't have comments on that besides this meeting. That's been a while and I wasn't there, so I may abstain from that one as well. I did have one on June 14th if no one had anything else for the April 12th meeting.
Okay, go ahead.
June 14th, public input says see attachments, but I didn't see any on this one. For public input, submitted input via email, but I don't see that attached to this.
We didn't attach it, but we do have it with the minutes that'll be approved for the file. And after the minutes are approved, then whatever the attachment was will be attached to it on the website.
Okay, so attachments are typically not there, but they'll be there in the approved final version.
After the minutes are approved, then when we put them up there, then they will be, everything will be with it that's supposed to be.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had for June 14th. June 21st, I didn't have anything. Someone else did. July 12th, I do a few things. Second page at the top, kind of second sentence, full real sentence. I didn't know if that was supposed to be lie heap. Is that acronym on the first line?
Yes.
So just that one letter there to make it light. And then small things, I don't know if it matters, but on section E, petitions and communications, I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth line. Fifth line.
That's on what set of minutes is that on? Grace? Which ones are you talking about now?
July 12th.
On the 12th still?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on the second page, section E, petitions and communications. The comment from Angie W, the fifth line down, just a small thing, maybe changing residents was to residents were given until August 15th. And then I don't know if it matters, but I'd maybe put a period at the end of that paragraph on disjointed instead of a comma, if it looks like the rest of them were like that. And then a few others down the second to last paragraph, the last line, just again, small thing, but said it could take up to a month or a month and a half. I think it was probably a month and a half. And then the last line of that same second page says that to approve they're eligible for participation, but maybe change the other there or their eligibility. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone else, but I think maybe keep the there and change eligibility or change the other there as in they are eligible. A few more small things on the third page, the third paragraph, fifth line down, maybe just add an S on continue. McKinley Vento continues to move from house to house. And then there's in the middle of the paragraph, there's a random we that's like the E's capitalized too. I don't know if that matters. And then the 7th paragraph, the last line, last sentence says to qualify for vouchers, you have to in a shelter. You have to be in a shelter. Also, the paragraph. Oh,
Go ahead.
The 11th paragraph, the last sentence, brief discussing ensued. The other ones say discussion, so maybe it would be consistent to say brief discussion ensued. And then the second to last paragraph, same third page, Ms. Chenoweth said the hotel program qualify as shelter, probably qualifies as shelter. Okay, fourth page, yeah, first paragraph, probably the program is exceptional and is one of the best things that the township has implemented, probably one of the best things that the township's implemented. And then I was just a little confused on the wording on that second paragraph where it says CM Wilkin asked about the emergency housing situation and understand that the hotel stays play an integral part for now. I didn't really understand that part. Maybe like with the understanding would maybe make more sense. I'm not really sure.
Probably understands that the hotel stays.
Okay, that would make sense. Just add an S to that then. And then the 4th paragraph, 3rd line says contact the township supervisor and she will work together with them. Probably just take out the two, just work together with them. That's all I had for that one.
Okay, thank you.
Unless anyone else did, I didn't have anything else, comments for August 9th. I don't for the public hearing. I do have comments for the meeting on August 9th. On the agenda, additions to the agenda, section 3, first page, additions to the agenda, says Supervisor Chenoweth asked to remove item B regarding the budget be removed from the agenda until next month. So I would suggest that we just say Supervisor Danielle Chenoweth asked that the item B regarding the budget be moved to the agenda until next month. That was all I had for that one. And then September 13th, it says that it's a regular meeting a few times in here, and then roll call says that Chair Marlin called the special meeting to order on roll call. And it looks like everywhere else it says it was a regular meeting. And then on the second page under new business, there's the resolution number, but there's not the title. I didn't look up to remember what that full title was, but I imagine that it had one. And then under that same new business, the fourth line down of the body of it says CM Grace. And I think it would make sense to just change it to CM Wilkin, since the other ones are all referred by last name. And that's all I have. Thank you.
James.
Yeah, can I move to divide the question to separate April 12th from the rest of them?
You want to take each one individually?
No, I just want to separate April 12th from the
Okay,
others
that's
that we were most of us were present for.
Okay. Any other corrections?
Probably need a second for that, and we need to vote to, since it was already a motion on the
Yes.
floor.
I would second that.
Okay, moved by James, seconded by Jaya to divide the question.
And it sounds like the severe thunderstorm is coming on, so let's be prepared for any minor interruption we might have.
Be prepared to take shelter if necessary. All right, we have a motion on the floor to divide the question. Do we need to vote on that, Phyllis?
Not really, just to divide the question, because you all have already stated you wasn't
Okay.
at this particular meeting, so we can go ahead on and vote on the other things.
So we will need the roll call vote on the minutes from the April 12th, 2021 meeting.
The motion needs to also state with the corrections on those minutes, okay?
You want to restate the motion, Mary Alice? As
So I
corrected.
move that the minutes from April, was it April 12th?
Yeah.
April 12th be approved. And I don't believe that there's any corrections for
No
those.
corrections on that one.
Were you not separating that one out?
We're separating that one out. So I just was going to move for that specific one. Is that okay?
Yeah, we can.
Second.
Okay. All right. Will the clerk please call the roll for the minutes of the April 12th meeting?
Okay, Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Present.
Ms. Bishop.
Is it present or abstain? I'll abstain.
Okay,
Oh, sorry, I may have made the wrong motion.
okay, I'll put you down as an abstention.
Yes, I will
Okay.
abstain. I apologize.
All right. Ms. Wilkin,
Abstain.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Abstain.
okay.
Okay, there's 3 yeses, 4 abstains.
Mhm.
It will go on the record as that, correct?
Yes, it will.
Okay. All right, now we'll move on to items June 14th, 2021, June 21st, 2021, public hearing and special meeting as corrected, July 12th, 2021, August 9th, 2021, and September 13th, 2021.
I'll move approval with the stated corrections by Councilmember Wilkin.
Second.
Who was the second? Jaya?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on to any additions to the agenda. Chandra, I'm sorry, Chandra.
Well, I just had a quick question about all these minutes. And so what was the reason up for the backup? Was it just because the clerk's office was short during that
Yes,
time?
yes,
Okay.
that's what it was.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And now that these are approved, they will be posted to the website.
Yes, they will.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, any additions to the agenda? All right. We'll move on to public participation. C. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so it was asking me to join as a panelist for a moment there. This is Christopher Hansen. The confusion that we saw tonight is the reason that the Open Meetings Act requires you to approve and post these meetings much sooner than you actually did. In the case of the township, the law says that you need to approve them either within 30 days or at your second subsequent meeting. So at the township, that would usually be within 60 days. So approving meeting minutes 6 months later is not acceptable. There's no real excuse for this. I mean, it's really silly to cite staffing or something like that. I mean, this is the city clerk's primary job description. I don't know why you couldn't just get it done. And it seems the only reason it was getting done is because I filed a complaint with the Illinois Attorney General a little more than a month ago. And all of a sudden, all of the Urbana City Council and the township minutes started to get approved and posted. So even in the cases when you were approving the minutes, you weren't posting them. The law says that if you're a public body and you have a website that is run by your full-time staff, then you have to post those minutes within 10 days of approving them. And you do have full-time staff that manage your website. So you do need to get that done. And I just hope you'll keep in mind as you, as a council, as a township, as you move forward to contemplate future legislation and say future tools that you choose to provide to your employees and staff, such as the police department, that you'll remember your own ability to comply with the rules that are placed upon you as a body. So it might be worth reflecting upon that when you go forward and talk about things like, say, I know I'm addressing the township, but say this ALPR program. If you're going to come up with policies and place those upon yourselves, you need to ask yourself, is the township capable of actually complying with policy? And in the case of these meeting minutes in the Open Meetings Act, the answer is absolutely not. You're really, really bad at it. So the minutes are important. I know the videos of meetings are posted, but the minutes are important because that's your actual legal stamped written record of the actions of the public body. You need to post those. And I showed you an example where the city clerk just invented a vote, just fabricated a vote at a city council meeting. And that only showed up in the minutes. So you do need to post those so the public can scrutinize them. And I hope you as a council will also scrutinize them as you did some tonight. And I hope the clerk will actually put some effort into, producing something that's that is worth the public deserves. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, next up, Bishop Underwood. Go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. I'm on Bishop's phone because it wouldn't work on my phone.
Understood.
And I just put my hands up here to talk later. I didn't know I was going to be called on. That's a miracle because I had 3 phones last week and I was not called on. So I'm going to lower my hand and try to make this work during city council meeting. Thank you.
We'll look for you then. Thank you. Okay, I think that is all the hands that I see raised for public participation for town board. I do have a request from Supervisor Chenoweth to change the agenda order to, she would like to ask for new business to be moved before the committee to verify bills. Is there a motion to make that change?
I move to move new business before committee to verify bills.
Okay. Is there a
Second.
second? Okay, moved by Chandra, seconded by James. Could the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. Go ahead, Danielle.
Thank you. Thanks for making that change. I have several guests that if UPTV, I don't know if Jason or Ibrahim is working this evening, but the attendees that need to be able to speak during this meeting from my side is Emily McCowan, Solange Leon Vasconez, excuse me, Solange, and Tracy Barkley, and that Nicole Filia is going to be supporting the financial report as our new accounting and office manager. So the item before you, there's 2 items before you for new business: a resolution authorizing me to sign a memorandum of understanding with the Channing Murray Foundation for the Bucket Brigade food delivery and Neighbors Helping Neighbors volunteer coordination. And then a similar resolution with a memorandum of understanding with Sola Gracia Farms to coordinate the Solidarity Gardens program. So I want to invite, I'm going to say a few words about each of those items. And then essentially if Emily, who I know is hosting the Who Nanny at Rose Bowl tonight and is time constrained, if you have any questions for the Channing Murray Foundation, if you could, actually, I guess I'll just take Channing Murray first so that she can leave, and then we can talk a little bit about the Sola Gracia. So essentially just the background, as you recall, the township has a long history of providing social service grants to agencies in the community. When I became supervisor, I audited those grants. And I found that the design that we had for the grants program was not necessarily meeting the needs of the township and was not targeting funds towards township residents. And there were other issues that I raised in the budget in detail in this year's budget when I explained that we are going to move from a grants program to a fee-for-service or contracts program. So essentially what you can anticipate is over the course of the year, as we partner with various organizations specifically to extend the services of township to Urbana residents who are low income in our community, I'm going to be bringing memoranda of understanding to you for your approval. So essentially, instead of those contracts kind of coming all at once, as we launch or renew those relationships, I'll be bringing those to you. So these are the first two. We do have $100,000 set aside in the budget. And I just want to say my guess, based on the demand for our programs, is that we will probably need to reallocate some of those dollars to existing township programs. But that is yet to be seen. You can see that in the financial report. We've been under on administrative costs, but program costs have been strong. So essentially, the first item is with the Channing Murray Foundation. I think that you are no stranger to the Bucket Brigade, which we launched during COVID. It was something where Emily, who is the executive director of the Channing Murray Foundation, and had been a township intern who had launched our garden project. And so we have been coordinating with Emily for a number of years on issues of food insecurity. And so I reached out to her proactively to say, what can we do given that the wheelhouse of the Channing Murray Foundation is food justice, with the Red Herring Coffee House as a nonprofit located there. And we devised a design that called the Bucket Brigade, that really the Channing Murray Foundation has led and implemented throughout this past year and a half. It was originally, so we made our first delivery March 25th, and our volunteer brigade that is entirely coordinated by the Channing Murray Foundation has made 1,543 deliveries to 4,532 people. Of those, about 1,800 of them are children. So the Bucket Brigade has really grown immensely during this time. It's played a very key role during the pandemic. And although the pandemic is not over, we're always, we are looking to the end, but it is not here yet. It's also the case that we discovered during this process that there are many residents in our community where driving or taking a bus to a food pantry and picking up food items that are supposed to last for 2 weeks, so is difficult. People with disabilities, folks who carrying that load with children on the bus does not work for them. We've really found that a home delivery service has served a lot of our township participants. During the pandemic, we funded the Bucket Brigade through private donations, which were voluminous and very generous, and we served the entire community. What we did is we then pulled back and began to really fund, just in this fiscal year, just Urbana residents. So essentially, we had a contract with Channing Murray Foundation last year to do the Bucket Brigade as a social service grant. So essentially, we started as private donations. We used a social service grant to fund the food pantry items, which are donated by St. Vincent de Paul. So we really appreciate that partnership. And then the hot meals were and will continue to be completely funded through private donations. So essentially what is before you this evening is a fee-for-service contract, memorandum of understanding with the Channing Murray Foundation that essentially outlines two programs: the Bucket Brigade, which would continue to serve, we would fund Urbana residents and residents with children in Urbana schools, that's kind of our purview for our emergency housing program. We would continue to fund that through this on a per bucket basis. So we just pay per bucket, per delivery. If there are fewer deliveries, we would pay less, and we would have a cap. So the cap would not exceed $10,700 per year. And that is, we think that will be the cost given the current rate that we see of deliveries. The second is a program that I approached the Channing Murray Foundation about sponsoring and supporting, which is the Neighbors Helping Neighbors program. This program was actually operated out of the township Before we hit the pandemic, we coordinated volunteers to do a whole host of items for township participants and for the administration of our programs. We can no longer, due to capacity concerns and space concerns and COVID safety concerns, coordinate volunteers directly. So we do have an intern program that is smaller. But Channing Murray Foundation, even before this contract started, has essentially been coordinating volunteers on a very low duty level. They helped to significantly coordinate the opening of the emergency housing program. They recruited volunteers. They connected us with donations. They organized all of the deliveries of the furniture, pickup and deliveries of the furniture and the placement, and they helped with cleaning and prep. So out of that experience, we've requested that they essentially support the township in continuing to coordinate volunteers for emergency housing program, and that they would also support our transitions in and out of the emergency housing program, and that they would support up to 4 events per year. Our first event is scheduled for August 23rd, and it will be a harvest event, hopefully with a vaccine clinic associated with it. And then we will do a coat drive with a coat giveaway, which was coordinated by Channing Murray Foundation last year. They were overwhelmed, honestly. There was so much demand and so many coats that it's not possible to do it on an all volunteer basis this year. We've needed the support of a program coordinator. So the Neighbors Helping Neighbors program would essentially pay for a portion of a program director who would coordinate volunteers at the Channing Murray Foundation and take the burden off of township for that. And I wanted to invite Emily to speak if she'd like to add anything to the resolution before you.
Thank you, Danielle. It's been such a privilege to work with the township. I think this is really such a beautiful way to show up for our community. I think, as you said, we've seen that there's all these barriers that folks are faced with in order to get food access to go to the food pantry, and we've found that getting the volunteer power to bring the food to doorsteps is really that extra piece to show our neighbors that we're here to support them and make them feel like they are people with worth and dignity. And we're just so pleased to continue this program and grow Neighbors Helping Neighbors. Yeah. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions for Emily or myself?
Okay, go. Oh, Chandra and then Mary Alice.
I don't have any questions, but I love this program. I'm so glad it's continuing. So thank you both for your work in this.
You're most welcome.
Mary Alice.
My question had more to do with the MOU. Is it appropriate to ask that question now or when this comes up for discussion with the resolution?
You can ask a technical question now, and then discussion would be after we have a motion in a second. So if there's a question about the resolution itself.
Yeah, there's a question with the MOU.
Yeah.
So in the MOU, it states that this is going to be up to, I think, 2025, where it can be renewed. 2025, where it can be renewed. And the MOU is subject to the annual board approval of the budget. I would rather see this be something separate from the budget, because oftentimes things going through the budget is arduous enough than us trying to pick out certain programs from it. So, I mean, my best guess is there's a strong support from the township for this type of program, but I think it would be helpful for us as we look at programs every year if we have a separate item outside of the budget. So that would be what I would like to suggest. I don't know if that's a technical question or not. So.
Just two responses. First, I just wanted to flag before you make the motion that the resolution itself has the wrong dollar figure and it should be 17,900. Not sure exactly how that happened, but so when you make the motion, if you could make the motion with the resolution saying 17,900. And then the second, to answer your question, Mary Alice, there's two ways to do this. I was trying to figure out what's the lightest lift. You can either, as a board, make the decision during the budget process, or you can annually approve an MOU with Channing Murray Foundation. And honestly, I went back and forth about either. I was just trying to figure out like what's the easiest approach. So I would say I see them as equivalent. If you would like to change it so that it's annual approval of the MOU, and then the budget is just one line item that is our fee for service, that's fine. I mean, it's, it's, what is it? A dozen one way, 12 the other. So,
Yeah,
so
I would prefer that if the town, I mean, but we can include that with the motion at that time.
that's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
it basically, it will come back to you each year, and no resolution, no MOU or contract that I sign can go past my term. So that's why the 2025.
And just to
Right, thank you.
confirm, instead of the 12,800, it's 17,900. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So you'll see it's broken up in MOU. It's 10.7. So it's 10.7K for Bucket Brigade and 7.2K for Neighbors Helping Neighbors. And you can see it's broken down by per bucket cost. That's a not to exceed number.
Gotcha. Any other questions for Danielle? Grace?
Sorry, I couldn't slide over to mute fast enough. Yeah, that was my question. So you're saying in the resolution, it's 17,900 on the therefore part of the resolution. Is that right?
Yes.
That's the corrected amount. And then I have a few comments I'll save. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, could we get a motion, please?
I'll move approval of resolution number T 2021-010-012R, resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign a memorandum of understanding with the Channing Murray Foundation for the Bucket Brigade food delivery and Neighbors Helping Neighbors volunteer coordination, with two changes, one in the total amount of 17,900 and the second one in the MOU to remove annually approved at the budget and just say annually reviewed by the Township Board.
I'll second that.
Okay, the town board. Any discussion? Oh, and it was seconded by Chandra. Discussion. Sharice?
I guess I'm a little bit confused because I'm looking, Danielle, for where you say the 17,000, is that under financial support, the CTSO will reimburse CMF?
Yeah, so if you look at, let me tell you what page it's on. If you look at page 2, excuse me, page 2, 3. Okay, so roles and responsibilities of Cunningham Township Supervisor's Office. So it'd be page 4. On page 4, you will see financial support under Bucket Brigade. And it says $15 per household delivery of grocery and specialty items, and then $20 for any emergency bags requested outside of regular delivery window, which we regularly request these for emergency housing. And they usually include specialty and more expensive items. So that amount should not exceed a 10.7. And then Neighbors Helping Neighbors, you can see that we'll contribute $600 a month to cover the staffing costs of coordinating the volunteer program and Bucket Brigade. And that amount shall not exceed 7.2K. So together you get the 17.9K, 17,900.
And that is actually stated in the resolution itself, under the now therefore be it resolved. You'll
Okay,
want to
that's,
change 12,800 to 17,900.
okay, that's what I was looking for.
That's
Thank
what you're
you.
approving. Okay.
Sure thing.
Any other comments? Grace?
Thanks. Okay, I say I'm not usually this English person, but it looks like there was a few spaces missing in the resolution, like the fourth whereas there's a space missing, I think, after with, and then the numbers of deliveries. Also in the therefore, the last sentence, providing up to, now changed to $17,900 annually. I think it's probably space, and the board authorizes that.
Yeah, I would, it's up to you all, but I would consider our time is not best served talking about spaces. It's immaterial.
Any other comments? Okay. Would the clerk please call the roll? And you're voting on the resolution as corrected by Mary Alice in the motion.
Okay. Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti, Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next item is resolution number T 2021-010-013R.
Thank you. And I just want to thank Emily and Solange for attending our meeting. So you're welcome to jump off as you need to, because I know your event starts in 15. So Tracy Barkley is the executive director of Sola Gracia Farms. Farm, I looked it up recently. It's not farms, it's farm, but honestly, it's many farms because it's the Solidarity Gardens. And we've been partnering for a number of years. Sola Gracia Farms has been in the portfolio of Cunningham Township, helping to address food insecurity, which again is not really in the wheelhouse of Township, but is definitely a deeply felt need of our participants. So we're grateful for a longstanding partnership with Sola Gracia Farms. And when pandemic hit, we were extremely concerned that our participants would be the first ones to really experience food insecurity. As I've explained to the town board in the past, our participants regularly run out of food stamps in their third week of food stamps. And so we oftentimes receive requests in that last week. And we had partnered with, and we continue to partner with Empty Tomb, which does food referrals. But simply we were overwhelmed with referrals, and Empty Tomb was not able to address all of the needs. So that's why we've been reaching out to address these food insecurity issues with other partners. So at the beginning of the pandemic, we put our heads together with our partner, Sola Gracia Farm, and really designed this concept of Solidarity Gardens, where we would empower, we had folks at home quarantining with time on their hands, anxious, worried they're going to get COVID. We had the richest soil in the world, where you can spit a watermelon seed on the ground and it turns into watermelon. I know it's not that easy. Tracy will tell you because she runs a farm, but it is the case that I've had multiple squashes growing out of my compost pile and I have done nothing to them. And we have folks who are in dire need of food. And what we saw is fresh food and food chain interruptions early on and throughout the pandemic, including recently with continuous food chain interruptions, where you'll go and see that there's, no eggs that day, or there's missing items in the produce section. So we put our heads together. We joined forces with a number of groups. Urbana Park District generously donated plots of land that were underutilized. Sola Gracia Farms really brings to the table technical expertise in running a farm. They have provided us technical expertise with our gardens for years. And they have have played a strong lead in coordination role in this last year, have played an administrative role in the Solidarity Gardens initiative. We played a fiscal sponsorship role and a program design and development role. So we would like to continue partnering in this successful collaboration. Last year, in the first season, which was 2020, we put approximately 1,000 square feet of community garden space under production. We distributed over 1,200 starts and packets of seeds to gardeners, and we grew approximately 600 pounds of produce to bring to families in need. We've certainly exceeded that poundage this year in 2021. So we have seen nothing but enthusiasm from our community in terms of growing food for their neighbors in need. We have heard so much positive feedback from the Bucket Brigade recipients. I don't know how many of you have been to a food pantry before, but in my experience and the experience of our participants, you oftentimes get canned goods and boxed goods, but you may not get fresh produce, eggs, milk, meats, cheeses. These are things that are hard to come by. So our Bucket Brigade is really dedicated to making sure that those fresh items are part of the brigade. And we have received very positive feedback about having greens and vegetables in the brigade, as well as we distribute that food through the feedings that Sola Gracia Farm has coordinated. So essentially what we've been doing, and I think we now have a greater understanding that when people are under stress, their immune systems are compromised, and the number one and two things that they need, essentially, in addition to reducing stress is fresh vegetables and sleep. So this does not address the sleep issue, but it does address the fresh veggies issue and the nutritional needs of folks. And I think it's a very important program that we continue to grow. Most recently, we've designed a mini grants program and an affiliates program so that gardens can officially be affiliates and they can access resources and mini grants that are all privately funded. So these dollars will go to basically resourcing Sola Gracia farms, to extend the services of Township, to coordinate Solidarity Gardens, which Township initiated but cannot continue to coordinate, nor is it really in our wheelhouse to kind of manage farms and provide that support. So, Sola Gracia Farm has been a great partner, and I would, and this will essentially resource staff time to support Sola Gracia, to support the Solidarity Gardens initiative. And I would invite Tracy to add any aspects of the program that she would like to add before we discuss it with the town board.
Sure. Thank you so much, Danielle. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. So two things I just want to make sure are clear to board members is, one, the program last year was made possible because there was fantastic coordination and collaboration between both Township, our farm, Park District, Urbana Free Library, and Channing Murray Foundation. But it grew to be so much more than I think we anticipated, which was awesome. We saw so many people gardening, so many square foot, so many yards being torn up and Park District land being turned into gardens. And that resulted in a lot of plant seeds going out and produce coming in. And so when we put our heads together this winter to talk about, how do we work with what we've started here and build on this awesome foundation and make it stronger and more sustainable, I think it really resulted in the need for really careful coordination so that we are making good use of everybody's time. And also, vegetables are perishable products, so we want to make sure that they're getting to the recipients as quickly as possible, which is where Sola is really powerful. We have Jubilee Cafe picking up from our farm on Mondays. We have the Carl Mobile Market picking up on Mondays. We donate to Daily Bread Soup Kitchen on Tuesdays. Wednesdays, the food bank comes and we send pallets of produce to them. Fridays, we run a free market over on Colorado Avenue in front of Sear Place and in front of Cornerstone Fellowship. So, and then on Saturdays, if produce is needed at the Learman Garden distribution, we can send produce there as well. So that's 5 days a week that we're getting produce out through our existing channels and relationships. And what happens is gardeners that have that are either gardening specifically for Solidarity Gardens and for helping their neighbors, or who just have an abundance in their own gardens and, you know, are not using enough on their own. They can bring it right to our farm, which is conveniently located in Southeast Urbana. We have a cooler set up with a little flag system. People can drop off their produce there, put the flag up, and we immediately put it in a cooler and get it ready to go out the next day to one of our partnerships with the hunger abatement program. So it's a pretty slick operation, but it takes a lot of coordination. And that's where grant support funding from Township in this last year made that possible. And that's why we talked to Danielle about additional support, both for our staff and then to bring an additional part-time person on to really keep enhancing and building this program, because it's kind of the best matchmaking service our community has to offer right now, putting gardeners and resources like seeds and plants and technical support together with people that really need the food. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions about this program or resolution? Mary Alice.
Thank you, Tracy, for coming tonight and talking about your program. I think it's a great program. I was wondering if you had any estimate on the number of people that donate per year. You said people can drop off if they have additional harvest.
So I don't have that to my, so we usually calculate everything in pounds. So I know that so far this season, we have 1,500 pounds that have been donated just to our farm site. There's also a produce collection site at Channing Murray Foundation. So what happens with that produce is it gets incorporated into prepared meals that go out then through the Bucket Brigade. So I don't have numbers on that. I know we have 1,500 pounds that have been brought in, but I will tell you, working at the farm, we often have as many as 3 to 4 people dropping off produce per day. Like it's pretty busy, and it's a really awesome opportunity for us to see and thank everyone that's bringing produce by. And sometimes it's, you know, a small bag of okra and tomatoes, and sometimes like there's products sitting outside of our very large cooler because people are doing a full scale harvest. I think it doesn't look like we're gonna have a frost anytime soon. So we still see harvest coming in. People are starting to close down their gardens, but I wouldn't be surprised if we break 2,000 pounds this year just through this program and our site alone. But we do have a little notebook, a little logbook that says who's bringing what and when. And so by the end of the season, when we do a wrap up, we'll have a better idea of how many people have been participating.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Grace.
You. And so this one is also up to 12,800. Is that right? And is this a different amount of money than I guess obviously the Channing Murray one and the previous one? And is this also out of that same 100,000 already approved?
Yeah, so yes, and yes, so it's up to 12,800. These grants or these memorandum of understanding aren't a set amount. They're actually based on what the need is. And so we negotiate a budget. I go back and forth with the program. They submit a budget. In this case, they also submitted job descriptions. I was able to I talked with Tracy 3 or 4 times about the design of the program and what was needed. And then we essentially came up with this number that would support their outreach coordinator, as well as a person who's dedicated, is part-time. This would be a new position dedicated to Solidarity Gardens. And you can see that essentially what is it? We have it listed in here. We expect that Solo Gracia will be providing approximately 15 hours a week from their education outreach coordinator. And actually they're funding half of that and we're funding half, and then 20 hours a week from a new staff member focused on supporting Solidarity Gardens. So that's how we got to that budget number.
And I was trying to understand your earlier comment too about grants versus fee for service. So is it correct that this was programs like this, or these programs would be something that the township would give a grant to that organization in partnership, and now they're charging like per bucket or per hour for services? Is that the correct understanding?
Correct. Yeah. So essentially what looked like a very hands-off grants program that, frankly, under my predecessor, I didn't see a lot of oversight in that grants process, is now a very hands-on very deeply collaborative. And you can see in the MOU, it's, checking in once a month, reflections on the program, building program and continuous improvement of the program. And then we pay for the specific budget item. And we focus on Urbana residents. So for example, Solidarity Gardens supports the entire community, but we are basically funding and supporting the Urbana portion. And we do that, they've essentially given me a budget that is 5 times this. They pay for seeds, they pay for starts, a lot of the different items. And then we're paying a portion that we see as kind of proportional to the Urbana impact.
Mary Alice.
Sorry, I have one more question. So under the services, which is 2.1, there is, no, 2.2, sorry. There's a mention of Douglas Park, and I thought Douglas Park was in Champaign. Am I incorrect on that?
Correct. Yeah. So no, Douglas Park is in Champaign, and this, so as I explained, that part of the education and outreach coordinator time is actually funded by Solidarity, by the Sola Gracia Farms. And what we did is that person basically oversees Meadowbrook and Douglas Park, and then supports Victory Park, our Garden, and Wood Street, and actually also Learman, although Learman is more independent, there's technical support provided to them as well. So Douglas Park is part, that garden is part of the Solidarity Gardens initiative. But essentially, we're funding the support for the Urbana Gardens, which is just a portion of the budget.
All right, and so in the actual resolution, there's not a dollar figure, so I think it might be appropriate to include the dollar figure of 12,800 in the now therefore section, just like we did in the previous one.
Yep, that makes sense.
We can just use the same language that wouldn't exceed that amount.
Correct, not to exceed $12,800.
I believe the other resolution says providing up to $12,800 annually. So,
Okay, I think Sharice has a hand up.
Sharice.
Yes, I guess what I want to ask, because nothing against Douglas Park, it's not far from my house, but there's also another garden that's close to my house that's on the corner of Hill and Romine, and I'm not sure what the name of that garden is. Is there any way that Sola Gracia could include that, because it's brand new, it's like just a couple of years old, and I think it's having a hard time getting started. I don't know if there's anything I can if we can include that or make an amendment for it later on, or
Tracy,
something like that.
Yeah, sure. Tracy,
I can,
because there's a number of gardens not listed here that are being supported. So
that one actually is listed in the memorandum of understanding, because it's the Habitat for Humanity community garden, and it's in its second year. Kim Gollins is the representative from Habitat for Humanity that's now joined Solidarity Gardens and regularly as part of our monthly calls. So we are working with Habitat for Humanity and supplying seeds, plants, some technical supports. So we are working together. It just takes some time to get community gardens off the ground. And especially, I think they're trying really hard to make sure that the garden was located on land and in a neighborhood where there have been many Habitat homes built and folks homed in those houses. And they're really trying to make sure that it is a true community garden with neighborhood buy-in, which sometimes takes some time and some coordination. So I see that getting better. And really one of the things about Solidarity Gardens is we are a network of support and resources. But I have to say there are a lot of community gardens that have been around a lot longer than Solidarity Gardens, Randolph Community Garden, Learman. And so we're trying to provide a network of supports, but also recognize that there are gardens that happen for different reasons with different participants, and timelines sometimes are different. So we're not in control of that garden, but are in support of Habitat for Humanity and what their efforts are there.
And just to clarify, any garden can become a Solidarity Gardens affiliate and get access to resources. They simply sign kind of an agreement that says what they will give and what they will get. And what they give essentially is that they agree to grow food for neighbors in need and to display a Solidarity Gardens yard sign. So it's very simple.
Okay, so are you saying that there has to be someone that's appointed to that runs that garden and to have some connection to any Sola Gracia support or township support?
So actually that garden is at all of our meetings, is represented at our meetings twice a month, and is very actively engaged in the program. What I'm explaining is that any garden, new gardens, old gardens, things we haven't heard about before, there's a very easy entry point, and anyone who essentially signs on and says, yes, I'm a Solidarity Garden, can get access to those resources. And we just kind of finished that. We've had an informal relationship, and we've kind of formalized that and made it clear how new gardens can access those resources.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have a question?
I think Grace has hand up.
Oh, sorry, it's comments. Are we at comments? Did we move?
No, we need a motion. Can we have a motion to get this on the table?
Yes, I would move resolution number T 2021-010-013R, resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign a memorandum of understanding with Sola Gracia Farms Solidarity Garden for approval.
And did you want to include the language related to providing up to $12,800 annually?
Yes, I did, with the additional language in the therefore of not to exceed $12,800 annually.
And I did note that on page 3, under number 4, the same language that you corrected in the last resolution, this MOU is subject to annual approval by the town board. Would you like to change the language to that to be consistent with your other resolution?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
I'll
So those
second.
2 changes. All right, moved by Grace, seconded by Mary Alice. Discussion. James. You're muted.
Sorry, I'm going to have to abstain from this vote because I currently serve as president of the Church Council of St. Matthew Lutheran Church, which has a relationship with Sola Gracia in its instantiation. And so I cannot vote on this.
Thank you. Any other comments? Grace?
Mine was just a quick comment just to share my positive experience working with these guys with Sola Gracia and Solidarity Gardens and some of their support with First Followers Gardens and things. So just wanted to reiterate my experience with the ease and generosity and openness of working with these groups for any garden, even small, somewhat disorganized ones and things. They've been very supportive and generous with that. So I just wanted to share that piece.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Abstain.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop.
Yes.
That motion passes. And I will say, I'm glad James brought up St. Matthew's Church. We owe that church a debt of gratitude for their longstanding support and really helping initiate Sola Gracia and providing a home for Sola Gracia.
Absolutely. +1. It's a great community asset and resource that church has helped to foster.
All right, that takes care of our new business. Thank you to the guests for coming. We'll move on to the committee to verify bills.
So this last month in the town fund, we had expenditures of $44,990.64. In the general assistance fund, we had $84,130.39. Our total in expenditures from both funds was $129,121.03. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about it.
Mary Alice.
I have two questions. One might be answered in the supervisor updates. My first question is, there are under programs there's Vaccination Campaign for $3,050. I was wondering if you could describe that expense, what those were used for.
Yeah, so what we did is we have launched a vaccination campaign to provide $50 for any current general assistance participant who brings a valid, complete vaccine card to our office, and also, or brings like a transcript from Carl Hospital or OSF or Christie. So essentially what this does is we would like to get to the point where we can have safer face-to-face interaction with participants. We need to know people's vaccination status. To do that, we don't require it. So we are incentivizing that. And it also helps folks who may be on the fence. I provided we've actually messaged our participants multiple times about the safety and reliability of vaccines. Many of our participants are immune compromised or have disabilities that make them susceptible to death. We have lost participants to COVID-19. It has been a very sad year and a half for us to watch participants struggle, and we want them to be protected with every resource that is available at our disposal, and vaccines are an important part of that. So for just those current general assistance participants, I withdrew money, and we've been distributing those dollars to participants. And we're hoping that will help boost vaccination rates, because our vaccination rate amongst our participants is lower than the average rate in the community. And that is very alarming, because our participants' average age is in their late 40s. And again, they are particularly susceptible to contracting COVID-19 and having difficulties just due to their healthcare complications. So I'm proud of that and excited that we may be able to boost vaccination rates with that program.
So how many people have you had paid out for that incentive?
So we just launched the incentive on Tuesday, and so I don't have that data yet, but it should be in the next town board report. So they started receiving their letters Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and this report was produced on Wednesday.
So this is just in preparation for that.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And then my second question had to do with the code review done by Andrew Fell. And I said, if that's something that should wait, I was just wondering if there were items that were highlighted that Township is going to take care of on California Street residents. But it can wait until the supervisor report. I just wanted to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. I wanted to state just, you'll see actually a donation made to the Angel Donor Fund that is equivalent to Andrew Fell's payment for architectural services. He donated back his entire fee to the Angel Donor Fund. And his fee was specifically so far for the special use permit process. So we worked with him during the special use permit process after the Plan Commission was present. After they took the vote, we secured his services. And he was, as you recall, he was present at the city council meeting to answer a question. So that fee was just for those hours, the sub hours.
Any other questions about Town Founder General Assistance Fund?
I think Grace has a hand up.
Grace, go ahead.
And so is this the whole report? Can we talk on this one? Is like, or just
I was going to wait to give the whole report with under reports for officers. So this is just the town bills. If you have any questions about expenditures from this last month, this would be a good time to ask them.
Any questions? Okay, we'll need a motion to, oh, I guess we'll need the general assistance fund report as well. All right, go ahead on the general assistance fund, Danielle, please.
Oh, in terms of what, yeah, I was just going to handle it during the reports of officers.
Oh, okay, then I
As-
need a motion to approve the town fund and general assistance fund.
I move to approve the town fund and general assistance fund.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
James? Okay. Your hand is very blurry. It's part of the background. Moved by Chandra, seconded by James. Could the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop.
Yes.
That motion passes. Okay, we'll move on to the reports of officers.
Okay, I think we just have this in the quarterly financial report, and I will be brief since I know we're at 7:40. So essentially, we continue to see general assistance participant roles drop. We have a very strong local economy for entry-level jobs right now. We're seeing a lot of folks getting work. So we do have a number of participants who have completed 2 months at Salt and Light and are eligible to start earning hours through educational and training goals. And we're launching that, and I will have more of an update in the future as we look to that. I wanted to just highlight a few things. You do have the supervisor's memo before you. We are back to providing transportation assistance now that MTD is no longer free. It's $60 a year, and we've done 30 annual bus passes. We also have been working hard to sign anyone with disabilities who's eligible for the free Dash Pass Hub. So 35 folks have signed up for Dash Passes, and that saved us quite a bit of money in our annual bus pass fees. So we've kind of streamlined that process. Rental assistance, we supported 6, up from 3 last year. Essentially, these are just COVID impacted or needing move-in assistance. We continue to support people applying for emergency rental assistance through our PC. We have definitely seen a spike in the ERA applications as the eviction moratorium ends, and we are processing those with all due speed. Just so you know, and this is different than anywhere else in the county, if you live in Urbana and you need to apply for rental assistance, you can apply directly to RPC, but I would encourage you to apply through Cunningham Township because we package, audit, and hand deliver the applications to RPC. So we do a lot of hand holding, make sure that everything looks good, and we will track success on those applications. You can call us anytime and we will contact RPC. RPC does not have a number to call, but we have a number to call. Our hours are posted on our website, on our front door, on the postcard that I sent to all participants. People can walk up. So there's many, so we really provide a service that is a deep service. And as a result, we've seen a much higher percentage of Urbana residents receive ERA than Champaign residents. That's unfortunate for Champaign, but it is something that we're providing Urbana residents. We definitely saw a very active, unfortunately active court day. The first court day since the eviction moratorium expired Monday, October 4th. There were 65 cases heard. 49 of them were first appearances. I think there were only about 10 who actually were actually qualified under the eviction moratorium. The rest were for other reasons. And we continue to have a staff person present at every eviction day in court, along with Land of Lincoln and RPC. And we do provide that direct hand holding for those who show up in person. There are the majority of folks not showing up in person. And so, and we do not have access to their addresses and contact information due to the eviction sealing. That said, we've mailed thousands of postcards to apartments that are locked, and we have hand delivered thousands of postcards to those that are unlocked. So that delivery is complete. And we've distributed our postcards to places throughout the community, including, as you had suggested, hospitals, grocery stores, and things like that. So we will continue to monitor the situation. I would say that I do not have a good reading on the situation. I would not say it is a tsunami at this point. And we will learn a lot more at I guess the next court date is tomorrow, and we'll be present for that. Utility support, we've basically exhausted our utility funds, and we're now using our angel donor funds. We have a healthy reserve there, but we'll also be fundraising for that support. Right now, we're really just supporting people with active shutoffs because there are other options for folks who are behind. Housing advocacy is going strong. We've successfully moved in 33% of those we helped apply, which is just phenomenal. So we've helped 204 participants representing 129 households apply for any available subsidized housing opportunity. We have a very strong partnership with the Housing Authority, where essentially we are screening for emergency housing vouchers. Our office has screened 117 people, and this is just in a 3-week time frame. We've made 31 referrals to this program. We represent 60% of all referrals to the program. So we've definitely played a strong role in helping those who are homeless and very high risk of homelessness access those limited vouchers. I'm very happy about how that program is going. Bridge to Home Rapid Rehousing, which is a partnership with the city of Urbana as our fiscal sponsor. We now have 4 households and 1 more referral actually that we brought in. So we're at 5. And we are currently seeing again a change in that grant that's going to help us expand our street outreach and emergency services. We've definitely seen a significant service reduction at CU at Home and have concerns about the long-term impacts in our community. As you look at it with your council hat on at services, we'd strongly encourage you to look at the dearth of emergency services that now exists for single individuals, men and women, and transgendered folks in our community, since CU at Home is probably at about a quarter to a third capacity. And is a dry shelter and will not support people who have recently moved to the community within the last 30 days. So we're seeing a lot of actively unsheltered individuals who are not served by CU at Home. Emergency housing, and I have brought all of these concerns to CU at Home, so I'm very clear and transparent about those concerns. Emergency housing, each month I report to you about move outs. We had one person move out 31 days after moving in. Everyone else has essentially remained. We are currently full. The progress this month is from last month. That should be deleted. I do want to talk about our digital inclusion campaign. I'm very proud of the work that our staff is doing to connect people to phones, internet, and computers. So we have held 2 events in our garden, and we're going to have 2 more events. We've signed up about 45 people for benefits. You may have seen those events on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We have helped 25 Urbana households sign up for the emergency broadband benefit, which provides $50 off their home internet service. It essentially makes their service free. So anyone who's receiving SNAP should strongly consider signing up for the emergency broadband benefit. And if you live in Urbana, you simply call our office, 384-4144, or come by when we are open, and we are happy to support you in accessing that. We are working closely with the U of I Community Data Clinic. We're now on our 3rd year of partnership with that group, and PCs for People, which is a new partnership. We helped through one event distribute 11 laptops and portable hotspots with free internet to those participants. And we work with the most vulnerable housed participants to receive those laptops. The rest, I think I've essentially covered in talking about our MOUs. I just want to do a few shout outs of thank yous to the Housing Authority's Youth Build Program, which has helped us now build 3 beds at Wood Street and Cunningham Township. The City of Urbana Landscape Recycling Center has been extremely generous in donating and delivering soil. Developmental Services Center now provides weekly support, watering, weeding, and helping maintain our garden beds. And the Urbana Public Arts Program is just about to install a sunflower themed shade sail. Say that many times fast. That is going to provide shaded seating in the garden. We plan on having our Harvest Festival Saturday, October 23rd. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them about the supervisor's memo.
Mary Alice.
It's not a question, Danielle, it's just a request. It would be really helpful if in any time that you're reporting out numbers, and I'll just use one example here, emergency housing and total served to date, it would be good for us to delineate like between fiscal years, because right now I think unless it's a typo, it says July 2020, it doesn't say July 2021.
That's correct. Yeah, it's to date since the beginning, and that's a great request. I actually have a urban planning student who's doing his capstone with us this year, and he'll be with us for 2 semesters. He is building a data dashboard because frankly, our programs have gotten so big and there's so many data points we're collecting that this long narrative format, I don't think works very well. So we're trying to have a visual format that we can provide you that looks at since the program origin, this fiscal year to date, and this last month, so that you can actually see for every program what that looks like. It also gives us, it's our way of tracking our progress and point in time counts. We're not required to do this in any way, but we think it's really important for public accountability that we, and frankly, because we are now serving thousands of residents after serving 26 in 2016. So I think it's important that the public know what their township is doing and be able to see those numbers. And then we plan on linking that data dashboard off our website. So it will be updated in real time and anyone can look at it and see what our progress has been. So it's a great suggestion. It's definitely been on our minds, and we'll have a much cleaner format once Jack, our intern, is finished with that data dashboard in the next couple of months.
All right, yeah, that would be greatly appreciated to be able to see our progress throughout the different fiscal years and then the cumulative impact. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are going to be developing a data dashboard. It'll probably be something in Tableau would be my guess.
He's actually doing it in Google spreadsheets, so that it's just because we work in Google spreadsheets. So every program director, like every case manager is required to update their numbers on a daily basis. And so we already track those numbers, and it also helps them to really feel their progress and see their progress and reflect on that. So that is just going to feed into this one data dashboard so that every day you'll see the numbers go up and you can see where we're at.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions about the general assistance report? Grace.
Thanks. Thanks for the report and the great work that you guys are doing. I think it's really great, the case management and auditing with the emergency rental assistance. And I was wondering where the hours of operation are on the township website, because I haven't been able to find them, and I've heard the same from others. So I didn't know if you could point out where they are / make them more clear.
I believe I'll take a look at the website. I don't want to be looking through the pages, but essentially, unless it was deleted during a recent revision, our programs, and then if you go to any assistance page on the assistance application, it says where our hours of operation are. So as you're filling it out, you also know when you can come to receive us. And as I said, it's been on the front of our building for a while. It's a big, I can send you a picture of it. It's a big sign on our big red door. And we sent a postcard out with our hours of operation. It is pretty standard that government agencies are open, during where the 8:30 to 4:30 is our hours of operation. And I'm not aware of anyone who has come to our office and not been able to access that service but I will definitely take a look at our website and make sure that it's clear. And honestly, if anyone has concerns, they really should just email me directly. It's supervisor@cunninghamtownship.org. If there's anything missing, it really is important that they address it immediately and directly with the supervisors, since I work full time and I can address that. So if something does come through, I would encourage you not to wait for the town board meeting, but to actually email me immediately so I can address the issue. Or please refer them to email me directly so that I can address the issue.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to reports of officers. Wayne.
Over here in the assessor's office, the deadline to appeal has passed, and we're now working on answering complaints. We didn't get as many complaints as we did last year, but that doesn't make the ones we got any less significant. And for the big ones, we are working with the city and the various taxpayers to resolve those complaints. I just want to say that I wasn't here last month, and I was very troubled by something I saw. Danielle and I are, unlike other units of government, the elected officers here at the township are full-time. And we work very hard in the exercise of our duties. So when we put a resolution out, we worked hard to do those resolutions in addition to our other duties. And it's one thing to point out a spelling error. We all make mistakes. But when you all make substantive changes to resolutions, those have a lot of unintended consequences. So when you all took out an employee from the resolution last month, that actually caused damage. Damage might be too strong of a word, but that caused a great inconvenience to Danielle and I, because the effect of what you did made it to where until we got all the other signatures on, Danielle and I were the only people authorized to sign checks, which means that if there was someone really in need and Danielle and I were not in the same place, we could not write a check to help that person. And I want to remind you all that this is not the city council. This is not the county board. Your powers as town board is very limited. It's pretty much limited to passing a budget, auditing the bills, passing a levy, approving contracts, setting the salaries of elected officials, and passing other various resolutions. But that's about it. You guys aren't even the corporate body of the township. That power resides in the electors at the annual town meeting. Another thing I want to say is that if you have a problem with one of our employees, I would expect you would address it with us or in closed session. But when you sit there as town board members, to bring up a problem you have with an employee in public session is very, very, very inappropriate. It's very inappropriate. It's one thing if you're up in public participation, you say whatever you want. But when you sit in that seat as a town board member, you have an obligation. You have certain obligations. And what I saw last month was not right. And I wanted to point that out. And specifically, James, I asked you for documents that you said you had twice, and you've not produced them. And I would just like to know why. Because it really inconvenienced us for a moment. And though that inconvenience was probably unintentional, it really made no sense to interrupt our operations the way you did. It made no sense. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Are we moving on to the quarterly financial report?
Yeah, so I want to first, I believe, I don't know if Nicole Philia is still with us. Yes, so Nicole is our accounting and operations manager, and if she could be promoted to be able to speak, I'd appreciate that. So essentially what we've provided is a budget to actuals for from July 1st to present. And I think, essentially the overall picture of the township is healthy. We're spending at a little under 21% when we're 25% through the year. There is one area, so typically what I do, and you can do it how you wish, but I look at percentage of the budget. And I look for anything that is essentially over 25% of the budget. I dig in deeper to try to figure out why it may be over 25%. Sometimes it's administrative errors, as is the case with health insurance, which actually is at 25%, but because of a QuickBooks kind of automatic accounting issue, we have only paid out 25%, but it registers in QuickBooks as 62%. So we're working on getting that fixed. And then there was an issue of the clerk's salary. That there was, we were doing checks and moving to direct deposit, and there were some delays in getting the clerk's salary. So some of that salary is from last fiscal year. So essentially, when you look at the budget, you can look at the pieces, see where we may be over 25%, and then drill into it. I will say in terms of our income, things are very healthy. We have received private donations. In some cases with the UU fund, we're at 57% of what we budgeted. And with the angel donor funds, we're about, between PayPal and cash and checks, we're at about 70%. So that's really phenomenal. In other areas, miscellaneous income, et cetera, we're over for various reasons. With the overarching personnel, we're right on target with personnel at 25%. With our administration, we're at 13%. And with our programs, we are overall, we're at 20%. But we expect that there will be increases in program expenses with the lifting of the eviction moratorium. So essentially overall, we feel our income is about close to 60%. Our expenses are at 20%, and we're about 25% through our budget. I'm happy to answer any questions. Before I do so, I just want to see if Nicole had anything she wanted to add to the report, and she's also here to answer questions. And I wanted you to get a chance to meet her since she is a new member of our leadership team.
Hi, all. Thanks for having me tonight. I really don't have anything to add except if anything is a little bit confusing, we did have a little bit of catch up over the last couple months as we had staff shortage. So I've been playing catch up since I got here. But to me, everything looks amazing, fantastic. I'm really happy with the donations that are coming in, and like Danielle said, we're pretty much right on schedule with the budget. But if you have any questions, let either one of us know, and I'm happy to answer any of that. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none. Fred, do we need a motion to approve this? I don't.
Was that a question to me?
Yes. Is there?
I didn't understand the question.
Is there a motion? Do we need a motion to approve the quarterly financial report?
I think approve it and place it on file is a normal procedure.
Okay, so we'll need a
I'm
motion.
sorry, accepting it and placing it on file.
We need a motion to accept and place and file the quarterly financial report. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve and place on file the quarterly financial reports.
Accept and place on file. Okay.
Accept and place on file.
All right. Is there a second? Grace.
Yeah, second.
All right. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. All right. That concludes reports of officers. I don't see any unfinished business. We have covered new business, and that brings us to adjournment. So with no further business before the town board, this meeting is adjourned, and we'll begin immediately with the Urbana City Council meeting when the clerk gives us the sign. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Night. Okay, are we ready to go, Phyllis?
Just shifting things around, Mayor. Okay, I'm ready to call the roll.
Thank you. We'll call this meeting to order.
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Here.
Ms. Hersey,
Here.
Ms. Colacetti, Ms. Bishop,
Here.
Ms. Wilkin,
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here. Next up is approval of minutes from the previous meetings of June 21st, 2021, which was a public hearing, and September 13th, 2021. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll move approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Jaya. Any corrections? Sharice? Sharice? You're muted.
Okay, there's a correction on the September 13th with down where it says public input, and it was Melinda Carter, and it should be Melinda Carr, C-A-R-R.
Thank you.
And I think that's the only one that I could find.
Any other substantial corrections? Grace?
Thanks. And with Melinda Carr, I was confused because it doesn't have any like comment. It's just the name. But I don't remember if that was someone who just came on and didn't speak. I don't really remember. Don't know what kind of filter we're using for substantial here, but one that I think definitely meets the criteria is on the third page under new business, the first ordinance. And the vote, I voted nay for that, which is not reflected.
Okay.
And yeah, at some point it would be nice to hear what counts as substantial or not here.
I think typos we can take care of by proofing these before their final posting, but certainly the vote here is one in spelling of names and that sort of thing. Just in the interest of time. Any other corrections? Okay. We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Do we need to do it with the changes or? No?
Pardon?
Do they need to change the motion to the corrections to the minutes?
That's not a problem. We'll handle that.
Okay.
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop. Ms. Bishop,
Yes, yes, yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. All right, we'll move on to additions to the agenda. There aren't any for today. Next up is presentations and public input. I wanted to begin today with a recognition of Indigenous peoples. And originally I had planned to read a proclamation, but I became aware of a publication called Indigenous Illinois, The History of American Indian Tribes in and around Champaign County. And the introduction in that publication was way better than the language in the proclamation I was going to read. So I'm going to read this introduction to replace what I was going to read. About this day, this Indigenous Peoples Day, we recognize the culture, history, and contributions of Native Americans. Indigenous Peoples Day offers an honest representation of American values. This holiday allows us as a community to pay tribute to the historical suffering of this community and honor their resilience. By the time European explorers arrived in the 15th century AD, scholars estimate that more than 50 million people were already living in the Americas. According to the US Census Bureau, there are about 4.5 million Native Americans and Alaska Natives in the United States today. Although they obtained citizenship in 1924, Native Americans were not allowed to vote until 1957. They live on, despite the genocide of their people, their underrepresentation in the country, and the barriers to society forced upon them. We honor Indigenous peoples not only today, but every day, and must continue to highlight their resilience and rich cultures. So this day, October 11th, is Indigenous Peoples Day. All right, we'll move on to presentation. This was added to the agenda by Council members Bishop and Wilkin, and it will be made by the Party for Social Liberation. And we'll need to promote to panelists the speakers. So if you can give us the names, or would you like to introduce this?
We'll bring forth Colin and Harant.
Okay, Colin
And
correct. Okay.
A little correction / introduction that this is presented by the Party for Socialism and Liberation is their organization name.
Oh, okay, we'll correct that.
Yeah, and we have Harant and Colin, who we're going to present and need to screen share as well, I believe.
Okay, and you'll have 10 minutes, please.
All right, we ready? Perfect. Let me just share my screen. All right, can everyone see?
Yes.
Perfect. Hi, my name's Harant Kemansi. I'm here with Colin Dodson. We're both organizers with the Party for Socialism and Liberation, Champaign-Urbana, and we're here today to talk about the urgent eviction crisis that our community is facing throughout Champaign County.
Sorry, I have to unmute myself first. So just to give a brief timeline of the pandemic that we're in and how this relates to the eviction crisis we're in the midst of. Governor Pritzker has issued several emergency executive orders with respect to the public health emergency of COVID-19, including several moratoria on evictions as listed on this slide. And in late 2020, the federal government passes the Consolidated Appropriations Act, including the Emergency Rental Assistance ERA 1. And then in early 2021, we have ERA 2. Now, ERA 1 and ERA 2 were provided directly to state governments, and in Champaign County, as we know, this money is being distributed by the Regional Planning Commission, the RPC. In August 21, the Supreme Court overturns the CDC's eviction moratorium on the grounds that the president and the CDC do not have the authority to issue such a moratorium without Congress's action, which puts the entire country at risk. And in October of this year, the Pritzker's eviction moratorium expired October 3rd, and has not since been renewed.
Your audio is not working, Haran.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. So a little bit of background on local work. On May 30th, 2020, the PSL in Champaign-Urbana organized our first local protest calling for the cancellation of rents and mortgages, part of a national protest, national movement called the Cancel the Rents movement, calling for the cancellation of rent and mortgage debt throughout the country to relieve economic hardship from the pandemic. And since then, we've organized 4 more protests as part of this movement locally. In response to the Supreme Court ruling striking down the federal eviction moratorium, we launched a campaign calling the sheriff not to carry out evictions. We've been on the ground canvassing. We've spoken to hundreds of people, collected over 300 signatures in support of our call upon the sheriff. We've met many people facing eviction, and people are having trouble accessing these ERA funds. And we're going to continue talking to residents, collecting signatures, and organizing people in this community until the sheriff commits to ending evictions. So this is the text of the petition that we've been circulating, and as of today, 339 residents in Champaign and Urbana, mostly in Urbana, have signed it. I can come back to this later for the sake of time if people want to read this, or I can send a link to it later. So let's talk about who is affected in the county. According to research by Sergo Ventures, there are 4,906 households across Champaign County that are at risk of eviction. This represents 13% of all renting households in Champaign County. And this number hasn't been decreasing significantly. In fact, the number of households at risk has risen by 1,329 between May 2021 and the last available data. And the total rent debt owed throughout Champaign County is currently $14,791,393, which represents an increase of just over 3.7 million since May of this year, and almost 7 million since May of last year. Families, young children, elderly people, and essential workers are all at risk of eviction. Some of our most vulnerable residents, Black residents, immigrants, members of the queer community are at the greatest risk. And currently 38 students, or 2% of the student body of Urbana High School, are already homeless. So many people in our community are imminently threatened by homelessness and by eviction. To just visualize this, this shows the increase in the months since May of this year of the number of households at risk of eviction. You can see that the number of households at risk of eviction has been fluctuating, but has not consistently been decreasing, and in fact has risen since earlier this year. Here is total rent debt in Champaign County. It's risen markedly since May of 2020, and again has fluctuated and is not at its highest level of the pandemic, but is still, again, almost $7 million higher than it was at the beginning of the pandemic. And to kind of break this graph down to recent months, since May of this year, again, total volume of rent debt has fluctuated, but has generally been increasing. So this is not a early pandemic problem. This is a problem that is very pressing and potentially getting worse right now. Colin, I believe you're muted.
Apologies. evictions are a threat not just to those who are at risk of, losing their housing, but to our entire community, especially during, a severe pandemic like we're in now. Because shelters required for proper social distancing, running water, and frankly, gas for hot water are essential for proper sanitation, for keeping masks and clothes clean. And then even from the CDC itself, an eviction moratorium is the right thing to do to keep people in their homes and out of congregate settings where COVID-19 spreads. It is imperative that public health authorities act quickly to mitigate such an increase of evictions, which could increase the likelihood of new spikes in SARS-CoV-2 transmission. Such mass evictions and the attendant public health consequences would be very difficult to reverse. And then beyond this, evictions disrupt so many aspects of life beyond even the most immediate and obvious. Children likely would have to switch schools. Records of eviction can prevent relocation to decent housing in safe neighborhoods because that they have an eviction on their record, and many landlords screen for that. And oftentimes eviction leads to job loss. It's very difficult to maintain, presentable, hireable appearance when you don't have a home or a shower to go to. And eviction, and this one should be kind of obvious, really severely impacts people's mental health. One study found that mothers who experienced eviction reported higher rates of depression 2 years after the move. So this strongly indicates that eviction is not just a condition of poverty, but it's also a cause of it.
So what can we do about this? What can we do to prevent mass evictions? The elected sheriff of Champaign County, Dustin Huerman, has the power to unilaterally stop all evictions. According to the state law, the sheriff has sole power over evictions. And Sheriff Huerman has actually previously suspended evictions in March of 2020 by ordering deputies not to process them. This has been done by sheriffs across the country, like Tom Dart in Cook County. And so Sheriff Huerman can single-handedly prevent thousands of evictions across our county. The Illinois 6th Judicial Circuit can also suspend eviction proceedings. I mentioned the eviction moratorium created by the sheriff in March of 2020. This was in collaboration with the Champaign County Judiciary. So that's another thing that could be done. What can City Council do? City Council can take a public stand on behalf of constituents and request that Sheriff Huerman not carry out eviction. In fact, 5 members of the current City Council have already signed on to an open letter from December of 2020 calling for an eviction moratorium. And council members are looking to reaffirm or announce their commitment to protecting residents by signing on to our petition or by supporting this in council. City Council could also communicate residents' concerns to the Regional Planning Commission about barriers to the application process in order to make rental assistance more accessible. And the most immediate thing is calling on the sheriff, is requesting that the sheriff act and not carry out evictions. This could look like in the immediate future a letter, and hopefully further down the line a resolution calling on all levels of government, the sheriff, the judiciary, and the governor to act to prevent evictions.
Before I dive into this one, I want to be perfectly clear. This is not meant to disparage any particular aid agency or organization in the community who are working their hearts out right now, trying to help the people of Urbana. The intention here is to illustrate the point that the available aid, it's not as simple as, raise your hand and you get the money to pay your rent. The thing is, there is such an immense backlog right now. My housemate's been to the RPC offices a few times, and what they're saying is that they're very consistently having very long lines, and it comes in waves, but there are ultimately more people coming through than the organizations in town can handle in a reasonable amount of time. Meanwhile, eviction proceedings are still continuing. So
Excuse me, I just need to interrupt. You've reached your 10 minutes, which is the amount stated in council rules, unless council votes to extend your time.
I'll move that we extend it by 5 minutes.
Second.
Okay, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. All right, you have 5 more minutes.
thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be brief and quick. So here we've just listed a couple of barriers that we've encountered, myself personally, and some of our organizers who've been trying to help people out. Knowing more about how the township approaches this does inform, I think, changes some of the suggestions, but I do think, for example, the issue, we did notice the issue of a lack of posted hours of operation on organizations' websites, whether that was the RPC or the township. It turns out those hours are available through Google, but not on the contact pages for the websites the last time that we had checked. And so, the simplest solution to this, and I fully recognize the best avenue at this point, Danielle is right, is to contact the leadership of those organizations. But, the simplest solution is ensuring that every associated organization that is providing and assistance in the community, post their hours of operation along with their phone numbers on their contact pages and on the aid pages. Another thing is that many of the questions on the application itself are not exactly clear how they should be answered. And the suggested option, the preface of the application makes it very clear that anything that is not filled out correctly or any incompleteness to the application at all, and the application will be denied. And so when certain questions are framed in such a way, what is your relationship to head of household? And the given options are spouse, domestic partner, child, or other relative. How do non-related roommates living in a household together fill out that portion of the application? That's just one example of a question. And not being able to get those answers on, either online from the organization's website, from the RPC, or to get a hold of someone at the RPC, and seeing, now it's probably better to go to the township, but then, the township is also limited in how many people they can serve, and for the time being limited to Urbana residents. So, it would make sense to better staff phone lines, and then for the questions that do come in, to post a frequently asked questions, form next to the application download, so people can see, these are, generalize the questions and then provide usable answers to them to help avoid, extra time and effort that may be needed, in the organizations to handle those issues.
Finally, I want to go over just a few concerns that might come up about an eviction moratorium. First of all, the impact on landlords. So one really important thing is the nationwide cancel the rents movement, which we are part of. It calls for the cancellation of rents and mortgages, specifically so that small landlords who live off rental income won't be put at risk either. We don't want anyone to be at risk of losing housing. It is also, I think fair to say that much of the area's rental properties are owned by large property management companies, which, in which case you don't have such a direct relationship of rental income, to immediate survivability. And of course, there's the point that evictions have ripple effects through our communities that will affect everyone, regardless of whether or not they're renting or landlords or neither. Also, finally, the last thing is I want to cover the issue of means testing. A means testing or other specifications are things that will limit circumstances under which people are protected by an eviction moratorium. And even if well-intentioned, these specifications can create potential loopholes. A great example is the last statewide eviction moratorium required people, in order to be protected, to prove economic hardship as a result of the pandemic. Problem is that that proof is not easily accessible to everyone. Not everyone has, easy proof that they lost their job because of the pandemic. Not, all impacts are so direct and, easily shown on paper. And landlords, acting in bad faith, who will almost always have greater access to legal resources than tenants, could exploit these, well-intentioned specifications as loopholes to unjustly evict tenants. It can also create additional bureaucratic red tape. And, whatever the downsides of a broad moratorium may be, only a broad moratorium minimizes the potential harm to tenants, to families, to community members in general. And the potential harms of a broad moratorium are at most harm to property, and the potential harms of a specific moratorium are harm to people. And whatever the downsides of each may be, the only a broad moratorium that says no evictions, period, is going to maximize the the amount of protection for people in our community who are facing eviction. That's all we have for you today. Thanks so much for your time and for letting us present. I'm happy to take any questions anyone has.
At this point, I believe in the interest of time, we should move on to public input, but thank you very much for your presentation. All right. We'll move on to public participation. Bishop Underwood, Reverend Dr. Evelyn Underwood.
Unmute. Did I get that? Unmute? Am I unmuted?
We can hear you, Dr. Underwood.
Thank you very much, Mayor Marlin, and City Council. Relating to last week and the license plate readers, we need quantitative or hard data. And the presentations the other week were mostly just qualitative. I know both datas are good, any PhD person will tell you that. But in this case, we need some numbers. And I think all the readings that members have done, from what I heard, they have some data. And we need to take a look at that. And I heard, let us do something, let us do anything, let us do anything. No, we need to, and I think I heard that we need to take our time. I mean, I don't mean take our time. What is another word for a bishop? We need to use wisdom as we move forward. And I think this is what I thought the reason that they kept it in committee. So they have time to look into the quantitative data that's out there. Additionally, I wanted to speak quickly regarding the cameras. When people that the people who are signing the petition understand what's going on. And I know people are fearful, and it's a lot of fear tactic. Yeah, because people are traumatized. I'm traumatized, but still, we still must remember what history has taught us. We can't do isolationism. We got to remember what history has taught us. We need to make sure that we have safeguards in place before we do that, unless we do it for everybody. If we do it for everybody, the entire city, that's one thing. But if we target, we can get into profiling and a lot of things. Yes, I'm fearful, traumatized, and as much as everybody else. But we must remember our children, our grandchildren. Yes, I know what's going on. Everybody does. We've got to make sure that we take the time to look into this and get those safeguards in place. Do I have any more time? Because I want to say one more quick thing about
you have 38 seconds.
Oh, good. What the gentleman, what they just talked about. I did have a question, but I guess I'd rather for the council people to have a chance to ask rather than me. So I guess I just would like to say that people need their homes. I spoke to you on Fox News last week. I'm a landlord, you know, and I heard the mayor say she's a landlord. Yeah, and I know all landlords need to get their rent. However, we're dealing with people and people lives. And we got to remember that.
Dr.
And remember
Underwood.
all that money that's up there that's gonna go back. Oh, did you say I got it? Okay, thank you.
You're out of time. Thank you very much. Okay, next up is Christopher Hansen. Can you unmute, Christopher?
Maybe his hand was still up from the last meeting. I never saw it go down.
Okay, well then we'll move on to Tracy Chong.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Tracy Chong. Mayor Marlene, I would like to play a video for council and the public. How do I do it? Mayor Marlene, last week I saw that someone managed to play a video. Can you tell me how to do it?
I can comment on that during council input and communications. Continue with your input, please.
So I can't play a video right now?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I guess I'll just speak. So last week during the CPRB resolution update, council members had many questions about the collective bargaining agreement between Urbana and the Fraternal Order of Police. However, Mayor Marlene cut the discussion short, saying that they didn't have the legal counsel present to answer all the questions. I'm pretty sure Mayor Marlene meant Urbana's lead negotiator and labor law attorney, Ben Gert. So I've brought up in the past few weeks how Ben Gert has wrongly used the bona fide occupational qualification exemption to assure City Council that it was legal for the police contract to have a clause that prohibits anyone with a felony conviction from volunteering to serve on the Urbana Civilian Police Review Board, even though this violates the Urbana Human Rights Ordinance. So I had a little time, so I went back to listen to what Ben Gert told City Council, and this time focusing on his claim, his first claim, that the collective bargaining agreement takes precedence over Urbana's Human Rights Ordinance. So I looked up Section 15 of the Illinois Public Labor Relations Act, which Ben Gert cited. And let me read it to you. In case of any conflict between the provisions of this act and any other law, executive order, or administrative regulation relating to wages, hours, and conditions of employment and employment relations, the provisions of this act or any collective bargaining agreement negotiated thereunder shall prevail and control. So from what I understand, the statute is very specific to matters of wages, hours, and conditions of employment and employment relations. So how does this relate to the volunteer members of the CPRB? To me, this means that both of Gert's claims about the legality of discriminatory clauses of the discriminatory clause in the FOP was presented with crucial facts missing. Basically, he lied to you guys again. This is again the same dishonest presentation by Gert, just like how he misrepresented the arbitration process to scare council members into approving the new police contract. How do you guys feel about this? My point of telling you this is so that the next time you hear ban Gert or some other legal counsel set up by Mayor Marlin or Carol Mitten to influence your votes, to use scare tactics, and I'm sure you will, this will go on and on until you stop it. I implore you to press them for answers and clarification, not to act rashly. It's okay to delay the vote and to do your homework. It's your responsibility to your constituents and to fact check the information given to you before making any big decisions. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Eddie Pratt Jr.
Hi, can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening. Good evening. Eddie Pratt Jr., Urbana resident. I just want to speak in solidarity with the PSL, their presentation about evictions and calling on the sheriff to suspend all evictions enforcement. It needs to be a resolution, not a letter. This needs to be a strong message, as strong as we can send it. We've all lived here. I don't care how you feel about either me or any kind of political leaning. I don't care about yours. But what we all do care about is the safety of all of us who live here. And so we've lived through 2020. We've lived through post April 15th after the ICC gave up protecting people's utilities, and we had crime rising from then on. And then the federal eviction moratorium, it's gone. Then about 10 million people across the country were locked out of unemployment benefits. There was almost an immediate reckoning for that for us locally. We had multiple shootings like within the next 36 hours. I mean, you can check the dates for yourself. These things keep on showing up, microcosms. Everything is a microcosm of, the country's woes. We need to protect people. I mean, I don't think I need to tell you what people will go to when they are being unhoused. And we're talking about people being unhoused en masse. Send a strong message that we will protect our neighbors. Let's not force people's hands out here more than it already is. Let's not add more stress out here than it already is. Let's not pin more people's backs against the wall. You do not want to be there to witness what happens, because what happens hurts us all, no matter who you are. Right, left, socialist, capitalist, Democrat, Republican, anarchist, you don't care, it don't matter. These things are happening regardless if you feel like dealing with it. But this is just one way and one thing that we can and should do as good neighbors, just as good people. That's all. So please, definitely, absolutely send this as a resolution. Solidarity to the PSL. And you guys have a good night.
Thank you. Next up is Ben Theobald. Theobald.
Oh, sorry. Am I coming in?
Yes, I can
Okay.
hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah. Hi. My name is Ben Theobald. I live. I'm a resident of Urbana, and I wanted to express my solidarity with the PSL on that we need a resolution for an eviction moratorium. Excuse me. I'm obviously very concerned with how I called the Champaign County Sheriff's Office, and while I'm not going to say exactly who I spoke to but essentially what they told me was that they're going to follow the law, the judge, which was go ahead with processing people getting evicted. And I find that very concerning, as we are, just want to remind you, we are still in a pandemic. Keep in mind, it's not, we're not at, we're still not, I think we're only a little bit over half of vaccinations. And I don't understand when someone says, oh, this is the law, how evicting, throwing people on the streets. And I don't know about you. I don't know if you've, I let me just say, as somebody who is currently, I've had, I've been in journalism. I've reported on, crime, and right now, obviously, we're dealing, I'm, this with what's been going on with the recent shootings, I find that as a result of what is happening with what's going on with our eviction moratorium, with poverty, and this is going to be a long process, and if we want to make sure that we are everyone's a healthy, robust community, a healthy, robust city, we need to make sure that we are looking out for our neighbors. As Eddie Pratt Jr. said, I don't find, and it's funny that, I keep going back to what they said to me about that. Well, this is the law, people's, about, being evictions are just the law. That's just how things are in this country. It's frustrating because we have a means tested in terms of how rent assistance works. A lot of people don't know about rent assistance. I mean, as I said, we're still in this pandemic that's been going on for a year now, and it's gonna, it's gonna be a long recovery. And I feel like we're just, people are gonna get left behind. Their lives are gonna, get significantly difficult, and if not, they're gonna be dealing with, a lot of pain, a lot of hurt that they really shouldn't be going through. And as a, we, as a, city that we talk about our, how progressives we are, how housing and things like housing is a human right. Well, I would hope that we show that our values as a city council, as a, democracy, what have you, as a, putting human rights, putting people's rights first instead of property, landowners, money first. And with that, I say, thank you very much for listening to me speak, and I yield the rest of my time. Have a good night.
Thank you. Next up is Alan Max Axelrod.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I'd like to start off my comment by saying, Tim Cowan, please address my public comment from last week about how Urbana was violating state law. Now, The thing that I want to first off say in my capacity as the Champaign-Urbana DSA co-chair is that I'm speaking in solidarity with the Party for Socialism and Liberation and their demands. They have done a lot of great work with an open letter and petition, and we have helped them with that petitioning effort somewhat. One thing that I do want to say is that there is something that strikes me as quite concerning. We have a very similar caseload to the end of January. We have not quite the same number of deaths, but about 70% of the number of deaths from the end of January. So let me tell you what else we did in January. We circulated an open letter on evictions back then too. Let's talk about who signed it. Just so that you know how much political cover you have. First off, I want to thank Mary Alice Wu for signing it not once, but twice. Chandra M. Bishop also signed this open letter as well as Sharice Hersey, my alderperson. Thank you for doing that. And this was circulated primarily among electeds at the time. I want to note specifically that some candidates took the initiative and signed. Those of you who are new on city council know that these people have signed and said that they thought that evictions were wrong when it comes to pandemic health policy back then, and our COVID caseloads are similar to what it is back then. Let me tell you some more people in Champaign County who signed this letter. Mary King on the county board was the first elected in the entire county to sign on to this letter. We actually had folks from multiple counties, so she's the first elected out of all of them to sign on. That's District 10. Leah Taylor, District 5 of Champaign County Board. Christian Hopkin, Champaign County Democratic Central Committee Precinct Committee person. Chris Storr, District 10, Champaign County Board. Andy Kornstrom, City of Champaign Township. Julie A. Pride, Champaign-Urbana Public Health District. Bo Barber, Precinct Committee person. And then Danielle Chenoweth, Township Supervisor. Mike Ingram, County Recorder of Deeds. Kyle Patterson, County Board Chair. Brody Dunn, Champaign County Democratic Precinct Committee person. Deshaun Williams, in his capacity back then as County Board District 6, but is now Deputy Treasurer. Cassandra C.J. Johnson, Treasurer. William Kiles, City of Champaign at Large. Evangeline Pinfetti, Champaign City Council, I think District 5, I could be wrong. Alicia Beck, Champaign City Council, District 2. Stephanie Furtado, Champaign County Board, District 8. And I also want to note Champaign County Board, I don't have the district noted for Eric Thorsland. I'm also holding in my hand a book called Evicted, which was cited in the presentation by the Party for Socialism and Liberation, which was handed to me 2 years ago by Jen Straub on the Champaign County Board. So you have more than the necessary political will to go through with a real resolution and pressuring our electeds in this community to uphold human rights at a time when it matters most. All that being said, I also want to note in particular the concern around the license plate cameras. I don't trust you, and many other people don't. Some people are recording the city council meetings in case you are improper. If you go through with this without the necessary protections, without the necessary accountability, and without any sort of sunsetting, then you know that you've learned nothing from Edward Snowden and the whole political theater that the defense industry had to put on to try and make people okay with the same things he was warning about. It's a completely different scale, but the mechanisms have something in engineering we call similitude. Have a good night.
Okay, let me check the list. All right, I don't see any other hands raised. So, Sarah Nixon.
Hello, City Council. This is Sarah Nixon. I wasn't planning to comment this evening, but I have to say deep gratitude and applause to Dr. Evelyn Underwood for everything she said about ALPRs, about the need for data, the need for policy, the need for caution, and about panic, and the need for solutions, but not rushing. to adopt untested and unproven technology. Same gratitude to Alan Axelrod for his whistleblowing, deep appreciation for Eddie Pratt Jr.'s always tireless input that always sees past partisan party lines, and applause for Tracy Chong every week too, who calls for accountable and honest government and who does the investigating, the inquiring, and the research to point you to the facts. If you would listen to even half of what she tells you and follow even a quarter of the recommendations she brings to you, we would have a functioning municipal government. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, and standing ovation to Tracy. And I also have to say thank you to the council members who are asking for accuracy and accountability in meeting minutes, for example, with regard to Cunningham Township, but also broadly. It is shameful to note how many Open Meetings Act violations and excuse me, and lawsuit losses the city has racked up. How much taxpayer money is being poured out in legal fees for the incompetence? And is falsifying a vote, as the clerk has done, is that incompetence or is it something else? I hope you get to the bottom of this culture of deception and dishonesty. And I thank Mr. Christopher Hansen for lifting the veil on this official misconduct. I also just want to mention or comment, if I have time, that during the Cunningham Township meeting, after the period for public input was already over, I heard the supervisor state truly disingenuously that if anyone has an issue, they should contact her, should email her. In fact, she withholds from the public that very means to contact her. It's not on the website. I'm looking at it right now. And the one and only way to contact the township is, other than going in person, which many people may not be able to manage, is by telephone. And actually, the township is extremely difficult to contact. I can speak from direct experience. When you do contact them, at least in my own experience, they're unresponsive. It has happened that I've had reason to phone the township. No one answered the phone. And I know from many conversations with many people that my experience is far from unique. I phoned for days and I left voicemail every time. I called an alternate number as well that was provided and I left voicemail there. I heard nothing back and I gave up. And I'd just like to say, Mr. Williams, you haranguing the city council was very, very inappropriate. The council is doing its job. You may not like it, but the council represents us, the people, and we need them to keep you accountable. And I think that's all I have to say this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Next person is Julie Watkins.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I was going to listen tonight, but I raised my hand to agree with the presentation about evictions and other public comment that agreeing with it. I really hope that the council will make a proclamation and do what's necessary to protect people, because it's important to not have these people not be safe. So please do something on the evictions. Thank you. That's all. Bye.
Thank you. Okay. Does anyone else wish to address the Urbana City Council? All right, then we'll move on to council input and communication. Chandra.
Hi, so I too enjoyed the presentation put on by PSL. I thank them for highlighting the issue with eviction. I do want to point out that City Council did send a letter today to Sheriff Herman. I'll take a moment to read it for the record. Dear Sheriff Herman, we are writing to request your urgent help preventing evictions during this pandemic. As we're sure you are aware, the eviction moratorium expired October 3rd in the state of Illinois. Unfortunately, this means nearly 5,000 families in our county are in danger of losing stable housing. Since there has been no action to prevent this at the state level, it is left to local jurisdictions to decide whether or not to resume eviction. We urge you to institute an immediate moratorium on evictions for the same reasons that you already instituted one during the winter months. The public health risk associated with homelessness and the real risks to life make this decision absolutely necessary. September 2021 was the deadliest month of the COVID-19 pandemic in Illinois since the previous winter, and Champaign County is still at high risk from emerging COVID-19 variants. As winter approaches, the threat posed by COVID-19 is likely to increase. Many residents in Champaign County are not back on their feet from the economic downturn, instability, and fallout from the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, leaving thousands of households at risk of eviction. Each eviction places already vulnerable people at further risk. We must protect tenants who are disproportionately poor, Black, Latino, Indigenous, immigrants, LGBTQ+, seniors with disabilities, and women. Restricting access to housing based on non-payment of rent during a pandemic endangers public health and well-being and can exacerbate community-wide problems such as gun violence. With lives on the line, it is imperative that we act as local governments to keep people in their homes and prevent the continued spread of COVID-19, as well as the long-term economic scarring and poor health consequences that come with eviction. The City of Urbana is working with the Regional Planning Commission and our own Community Development Department to make rental assistance available to households in need, but there are still barriers that exist for some residents. And while we work to reduce them, we are asking for you to take the necessary actions that will allow those seeking rental assistance to remain in their home. With urgency, signed the Urbana City Council. And I want to thank my fellow council members for signing on to that letter and standing in support of moratorium on evictions in our county and throughout our community. Also, I sort of want to make a point of last week's public hearing. It was very interesting, to say the least. I think it was sort of tense, and I propose having a discussion about communication between us and the administration. There seems to still be things unresolved stemming from that meeting. Our co-equal branches of government must be able to work together, and after hearing concerns voiced by my fellow alderpersons and some echoed by constituents, I believe it's important to ensure that further miscommunication does not inhibit our ability to work together to serve the people of Urbana. So I'm asking that we add an agenda item to the next week's meeting to briefly chat about council expectations from staff and vice versa. So thank you in advance for adding that, Phyllis. That's all.
Okay. Mary Alice.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say Chandra is the one who authored that. So I want to shout out to Chandra. Thank you very much, to the point where she actually drove to people's houses to get a physical signature on the letter. So you went above and beyond, Chandra. So thank you for making that happen. I also wanted to, I am hearing from people about the struggles that they've had in order to access the resources that the RPC has to help with rental assistance. I have reached out to them, and I'm working on scheduling a meeting with them so that I can go over some options. So I just wanted to let the public know that I'm following up on that piece.
James.
All right. I also want to thank Chandra for doing that legwork today. It was a challenging day to be trying to get around and collect signatures. So thank you for that. And Mary Alice, thank you for the work with the RPC, because The challenge is there's a lot of money available to help with rental assistance that has not flowed yet. And a large reason for that is the process and the barriers it provides. I do want to speak to the town board meeting earlier. I know this is council. I don't need to be advised on the differences between town board and city council and county board. There are some similarities. We are as town board, we are fiduciarily responsible. In some ways, the county board has some similarities there because they are fiduciarily responsible, but they have statutory officials who have their own right, like the supervisor and the assessor, who are elected to do their job and don't answer to us, but answer to the voters. I will say for my colleagues and for anybody who was watching earlier, I have communicated with Danielle. I have apologized for bringing something to the board meeting that I could have talked to her about beforehand and explained the circumstances on how that happened. I will also point out that there was no question, at least that I voiced, about Kyle Patterson's quality of work or his commitment to public service, both in the supervisor's office and as county board chair. I've known Kyle to be a passionate, committed public servant in both of those roles. So the idea that there was some kind of concern about his performance aired in that meeting. I don't recall doing it. I don't recall anybody else doing that. But I do know that we are under a scrutiny these days that is unprecedented. And when things can be questioned because of issues, I think it's important for us to be careful. And that is why I raised the specific concerns in that meeting based on historical knowledge. The problem with historical knowledge is things change as things move forward. I intend to follow up with Danielle on the details of what motivated that question by me, but I don't regret it, because as you saw earlier today, I believe that trying to accomplish things in spite of potential conflict of interest is not the way to go. You can support something but have a conflict of interest and have to step back from it. You may not be able to do the good things that you think you need to do because of the law or because of other issues. And so I'm always going to be clear and objective about that and not do it on a reason of personal basis. It'll be because I think it's good government. So thanks.
Jaya?
All right. I would like to begin my comment today by recognizing and acknowledging that we are on the lands of the Peoria, Kaskaskia, Piankashaw, Wea, Miami, Mascoutin, Odawa, Sauk, Meskwaki, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Chickasaw nations. These lands were the traditional territories of these native nations prior to their forced removal. These lands continue to carry the stories of these nations and their struggles for survival and identity. As a community with a land-grant institution, the University of Illinois, we have a particular responsibility to acknowledge the peoples of these lands, as well as the histories of dispossession that have allowed for the growth of this institution and our community for the past 150 years. We are also obligated to reflect on and actively address these histories and the role that this university and our community has played in shaping them. This acknowledgement and the centering of Native peoples is a start as we move forward for the next 150 years. That is a modified version of the land acknowledgement statement suggested by the Native American House from the University of Illinois. And I would strongly advocate for us adopting a similar statement for our city, that should be said at the beginning of every single one of our meetings. And I would suggest that be done in consultation with Native American House or another expert on this matter. I do appreciate the reading that was done by their mayor earlier today in honor of Indigenous Peoples Day, and would like to see that commitment and attention continue not only on Indigenous Peoples Day, but on any meeting that we have as well. I'd also like to echo my gratitude to Chandra for organizing that letter and getting it signed. I'm trying to talk quickly so I can fit things in. I also want to have a conversation next week since I will be chairing the committee of the whole, and I know I've heard some comments and concerns from folks already. I'd be more than happy to consolidate that and share it with the clerk just to make things easier in advance. I also would really like to know what is the difference between why some community members are able to show a video and other community members are not. I find that highly problematic. And then the other point I would like to raise is that I think in providing corrections to the minutes, I see that as part of our oversight. And if that's incorrect, please let us know, but it seems arbitrary to say what is or is not substantial, especially when a council member or town board member has taken the time to note those errors. They might not be of consequence, but this is a representation of our community. And if that input is not legally required, we should have documentation to say that. But I think, as James was just noting, we take our responsibility as representatives of these two entities very seriously. And I appreciate Grace's attention to that detail as well.
Grace.
Thanks. Also wanted to say thank you for those involved in the presentation today on evictions, and fellow council members, particularly Chandra for working on the letter, and everyone else for signing it and sending that out. And also the community members that have spoken and been doing the work on this. Especially even the township we heard earlier is attending eviction court and trying to connect people with resources before they reach eviction. And I think that's really important as well, connecting people to those resources and rental assistance beforehand, and blocking evictions as they may happen. I am curious about resolution, about, I know we can't direct the sheriff, but how we could have a resolution or maybe a memorandum or statement, something a little more than a letter. So I am interested in some input from staff on how to go about that. Another point is that I don't want to forget about the special meeting that we had agreed on having about council priorities, and still waiting on some assistance to schedule that. If we need to schedule that ourselves, please just let me or us know and we can take lead on that. But I was kind of waiting for staff to take lead on that as they had in the past. So please let me know if that's not the case. And then also for Indigenous Peoples Day, I'm glad that, we are recognizing this, at least not calling it Columbus Day. It is really important to acknowledge the pain, genocide, and dishonesty to Indigenous peoples of this land that was part of the conquering and founding of our country. I think that some ways that I've found, just wanted to share about ways to honor Indigenous Peoples Day, is to educate ourselves and others about Indigenous history and culture, support as in donate to or purchase from, or in other ways support and work with Indigenous groups or Indigenous peoples, and then also consider the continued impacts on Indigenous peoples in the US economically and socially, and particularly in our personal lives, any insensitivity and disrespect of cultural appropriation of things like mascots and Halloween costumes and other ways of cultural disrespect after such terrible things have been done and continue to be done. That's all. Thanks.
Any other council members wish to comment? I think everyone's, Sharice.
I'd also like to thank Chandra for her diligence this weekend. Thank you for the letter and coming by my house and getting me to sign it and so on and so forth. Really appreciate that. I'm also concerned regarding the evictions and how that's going to happen, how we're going to resolve that problem. Regarding the RPC and the eviction notices and so on and so forth, I think that maybe that presentation that we saw, and even people who've commented regarding all these things, I hope they're also taking this to the Champaign County Board, these particular issues that they have, because there is very little that Urbana just by ourselves could accomplish. As far as trying to get that, that definitely is a county thing. And another reminder is that for months as well, it's not just been weeks, but it has been months that RPC has had access, has had these funds and been trying to get people to come in to get their rent abated some kind of way through the funds that have been given. So I don't know if there's an issue with communication from our RPC for the past few months or what, and I don't know what we can actually do except what we're already doing to try to help get that out, get that information out, and so on and so forth. The other thing I'd like to say is actually in some issues regarding last week's meeting too. One person stated that the NAACP does not represent the entire Black community. There is no one entity that represents the entire of anything. I'm gonna say that first. However, the NAACP as a national institution since the 1920s has always recognized violence against Black people and Black men in particularly. So with that in mind, I'm going to say a Black man was shot on Sunday. And I'm done.
Thank you. Is there any other council member? I think everyone has had a chance to speak. I will address a couple of questions that were raised. Carol will be giving a staff update later in the meeting, and it's going to address give an update on the council goal setting session. We'll have an update on the ARPA funding timeline, and as well as a staffing update. So it should answer a lot of the questions that have been raised or that I know you have, and the progress that we've made there on that. I want to address the contention that was made last week and again this week about the proposed co-responder follow-up model and its relationship to Public Act 102-0580, which is also known as the Emergency Services and Support Act. And that includes a provision for the National 988 hotline and deals with mental health crisis response on a national level, but also on a state level. We became aware of this legislation over a month ago. It was reviewed by our city attorney. We also consulted with Ralph Caldwell, who's director of the Champaign County 911 METCAD call center. He's in close contact with state officials and is very familiar with this legislation. And everyone has, after review of this, it has been concluded that our proposed follow-up co-responder model is not in conflict with the state legislation, and we will not be in violation of anything by standing up this model. It's related to a live response. So there is no conflict with this state law, and we have not found any reason from a legal standpoint not to proceed. So just that's the focus on that, and we can have more information next week if you'd like that. The question about video public input. Yes, there is no provision in council rules for video public input. We take verbal input, we take written input either via email or snail mail. Last week, in preparation for the meeting, the license plate reader, I was contacted by Urbana resident, a grandmother who's raising her 2 grandchildren, who has experienced a person being shot outside their apartment. And after they moved to another neighborhood, they were a couple blocks away from another fatal shooting. She asked me if she could allow the voice of her 8-year-old granddaughter to speak. And it's not possible, it's just not practical for her to do it live like everyone else has been doing over Zoom. So I said yes. If I had been thinking or responding with my head at that time, I would have said, well, we don't have a provision in our rules. You'll have to send the video around to council members. But I'm sorry, I responded with my heart in the moment, and I wanted to give that child a voice. And so I did, and made an exception. It was not, and I apologize, but we have no provision in council rules at this time. And that's the story there. So I think that's all I needed to say on at this point in time. We'll move on to unfinished business. And we have none. Reports of standing committee. We have one item on the agenda. Councilmember Hersey.
Okay, I'd like to bring to the city council from the committee of the whole meeting from last week, a resolution number 2021-09-043R, a resolution approving the Urbana Home Consortium Community Housing Development Organization Agreement Habitat Choto Developer FY 2020 to city council for approval. Can I get a second? I guess.
I'll second.
Is that Chandra? Okay. Moved by Sharice, seconded by Chandra.
Is there any discussion?
Grace.
Thank you. I still have some issues with the way this was phrased and still clarified last week with how the situation happened. So I didn't know if staff wanted to further clarify, or I'm happy to share on behalf of First Followers to clarify a little bit of the situation.
Hi, Grace. This is Sheila Dodd. I had met with First Followers a year or so ago to talk about encouraging them to become a Choto because they have an opportunity for additional funding. And of course, our first year is always a learning experience. Excuse me. And so at the time that we worked out the original agreement, they are acting as a sponsor and they don't own the properties. And so they had to have a separate legal agreement with the owner of the properties. The amount of money that was in their original request and that council had approved would have required a 10-year affordability period. The owner of the property was not in support of that. And so in working with Marlon and James, we amended the agreement to meet a 5-year affordability period, and then that left a balance of funds that needed to be reallocated. First Followers has met their agreement. They've rehabbed 2 units, which is what they had proposed originally. They just found other sources to fill that gap so that they could meet the requirements of the 5-year affordability period. And so staff had to reallocate that money or else we lose it. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you for that. Yeah, I just wanted to be sure that it was clear that this was something outside of First Followers' control, that they met their part of the agreement. This was something outside of their control, and then that money was not available to them because,
well, it was available to them, but working with the owner of the property, they chose to step back some from it. I had a technical assistance meeting with First Followers on Monday of last week as well, and because they have a couple of different agreements with us, and we had a very productive and positive meeting, and Urbana is doing everything that we can to see that they succeed and that their organization continues to grow, because they are a great organization and they fill a gap in the community that we don't have others that can help with.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate it. And that seems like a creative solution to put it somewhere else. And so I think that's all great, and appreciate, the work in supporting that organization, and just wanted to be clear so that it wasn't misleading that they didn't use all the money that they could have, or they didn't fulfill a part of a bargain, that this was something outside of their control within the system.
Okay, anyone else? All right, Phyllis, could you please call the roll?
I'll
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Phyllis, please call the roll.
I guess I need to unmute myself, don't I? Okay, Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you, Sharice. Reports of special committees, we have none. Next item is reports of officers. I'll start off. I wanted to let council know and the public that we've scheduled the town halls that were requested by the NAACP for Thursday, October 28th, 2021, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. Friday, October 29th, from 1 to 3 p.m. These will be co-hosted with the city and the NAACP. They will be held at Vineyard Church. They have a very large facility. We will be masked and socially distanced inside, and we just confirmed that today, so we'll be sending around a flyer and information to council and publicizing this in the next couple of weeks. So those have been scheduled.
What's the time on the 28th again?
28th is 5:30 to 7:30, and on the 29th, it's 1 to 3 p.m. And then I just want to let folks know that the state of Illinois has funding available. It's called the Back to Business Grants. And the deadline for applying for these is Wednesday, so it's coming up fast. But if you Google B2B Grants Illinois, you'll get to the website where you can apply. And this provides funding to small businesses who have experienced COVID-related losses, and I believe it's up to $15,000. So it's a follow-up on the big grants that were offered earlier. So if people are still coming up short related to COVID, it's worth looking at this website. Again, Google B2B Grants. And then I will turn this over to Carol, and she's got a couple of updates plus an update on our staffing situation, which council has asked about that.
Okay, and then I don't want to forget Will at the end with
Yes.
the ARPA update.
Yes.
Okay, so we've been trying to identify a facilitator for your council priorities discussion, and we have, and I should be in the next day or two sharing a proposal with you so that you can confirm that the approach that the facilitator would like to use is one that you agree with. So be looking for that. He's not available to start until later in November, but I think in terms of coordinating schedules, that's probably the best we'll be able to do with y'all as well. But we've had trouble identifying a facilitator, so we're happy to have someone who's available. So for the bulk of my staff report this evening, I want to share some detail with you about the city's staffing challenges. And these challenges are of great concern to the mayor and me and the leadership team. And so it's important that you also have an appreciation for the risk to the city that these challenges pose, particularly in the current market where there are so many available jobs and too few qualified individuals to go around. So I want to start though first with some good news. And so in a few minutes, you'll be asked to approve the appointment of John Zeman as our next city engineer. And we're really excited to welcome John to our team. So that's good news. We're also preparing for the arrival of our next assistant city engineer by the name of Dr. Carmen Franks, who will be relocating back to Illinois with her family later this year, and she'll be starting with us in early 2022. And rounding out the big news in Public Works is the appointment of Tim Cowan as our permanent Public Works Director. You got his resume in your packet. And Tim has been with us for about a year as the interim Public Works Director and has become an important member of our leadership team. So you'll be asked to approve his appointment in 2 weeks on October 25th. We've also hired a new UPTV production coordinator who will be taking over some of Jason Liggett's responsibilities. And I say some because Jason's plate was too full. And we can't ask another individual to carry the load that we had placed on Jason. So our new UPTV production coordinator is Barema Widrago, And I apologize, Barema, if I got your last name wrong, but he's recently been working part-time as a UPTV production assistant, and he has begun his new role as a production coordinator. So welcome to him. So big picture, where does this leave us? We currently have more than 10% of our positions vacant, and that includes one department head with the departure of Lori Pearson. Since we have limited staff capacity and human resources, we cannot recruit for all vacant positions simultaneously, so about half of the vacant positions are under active recruitment at this time. 6 of the positions for which we are actively hiring are firefighters, who will be the net new hires as a result of the SAFER grant. If we leave those out, there are about 25.5 FTEs where we have true vacancies. And much of that work is being performed by existing staff on a priority basis. And that's by letting other work lapse that's considered lower priority, or the work is not being done at all. Our ability to deliver existing services is significantly compromised as a result, and our ability to take on new tasks is essentially non-existent. So even when we're fully staffed, we have no excess capacity because we run so lean. So that's why we needed to contract with RPC to handle the ARPA public engagement, facilitation, and reporting. And that's why we've had to search for someone to handle the public engagement and facilitation around both reimagining public safety and council priority setting. So I'd also add that we often get high priority tasks from outside the organization that we just simply must address. And a good example is all the COVID related grant funds that are required to be administered by the localities. Some are administered at another level, but some come directly to us. We don't control when that money comes. We don't control how much money comes, the rules around the grants, or the deadlines. So I was chatting with Sheila last week, and she said her 2-person team pushed out $1 million in grants last year. And that includes a substantial amount of COVID money. And our small economic development staff pushed out $500,000 in Cures ES grants last year as well. That's a lot of work for very small teams of people. So we don't expect this surge of vacancies to be short-lived either. In the fire department alone, we currently have more than a dozen people who have the years in service and age to retire. That's a lot of people. Within the next 12 months, we will have 5 police officers who are fully eligible to retire, and almost twice that many with a sufficient number of years to retire prior to achieving the age of 50. These statistics include the entire police command staff. If you remember from the workforce diversity presentation we made back in June, more than 1/4 of our workforce is age 50 or above. Not all those folks are eligible to retire, and they include the fire and police department people that I just mentioned, but it gives you some idea of how at risk our service levels are to a lack of available staff. And of 6 department heads, if you include the executive department, 4 of us are retirement age. So that's a lot of vulnerability. So why is this happening? There are a variety of reasons, some of which are unique to Urbana and some of which are not. So we always have staff turnover from departures or for other opportunities and retirements. We generally have lower salaries for comparable positions in Champaign, and we have lost at least 5 employees who I can think of off the top of my head to Champaign during the past 3 years. We have some open positions that have been extremely difficult to recruit good candidates for, and the public works director and the city engineer are good examples of that. We currently have an opening for an electrical supervisor that is proving next to impossible to find a good candidate. And so that keeps, when we have a difficult to recruit for position, keeps those positions open longer, and it takes time away from other recruitments. Now, the reason we're asking more and more of existing staff rather than maintaining a sustainable level of services given the staff we have, which creates undue stress. Working people everywhere are reevaluating how they want to be spending their time which is prompting many people to quit their jobs, some even before they have a new job lined up. And widespread distrust in government has led to a toxic atmosphere at public meetings, including those in Urbana, which has had a direct impact on certain employees' willingness to continue to work here. So I assume you've all heard of the Great Resignation. Well, it has started happening here in Urbana, and we have every expectation that it will continue. So as the city council and as the rest of us as leaders, we need to be aware of these challenges because staff turnover and recruitment difficulties impact our shared responsibility to deliver the services that our residents expect. City of Urbana employees are individuals with highly sought after skills and many years of experience who have chosen public service. The people of this community depend upon them for essential services they provide, and they've earned our respect and deserve our support. I'm happy to answer any questions about that, or we can move to Will, who has an update on the ARPA efforts with the RPC. You're muted, Mayor.
Go ahead, Grace.
Thanks. Was wondering, in light of all the staffing things, we've talked about this a little bit before, but about head of finance and HR being one combined position. And I thought the answer given before was that it's not a problem, that there's, enough HR staff available, or maybe it would be a different position. I'm not quite sure I'm remembering exactly, but I just wanted to re-ask if the problem is kind of stemming from the human resources managing, maybe hiring and recruiting and some of the support for staff and their satisfaction, if that is a need, or why we still have that combined position with HR.
I think that one could certainly debate whether or not that those two positions should remain combined, but I don't think it's directly impacting the issue of recruiting and retaining employees. And the reason is this: we actually have more FTEs working on HR matters now that we have the departments combined than we did when they were separate. So we actually have more people power working on HR than we did before. So I don't think that those two things are related.
So was it just extremely limited before? Because you just said there's limited staff in HR, but there's more than there was. Was it like extremely limited before?
Well, we have a lot of vacancies. We've never been able to, unless we didn't have very many vacancies, we've never been able to do all the recruiting at the same time. I mean, we don't advertise all the positions at the same time. That was my point when I mentioned that in my remarks. That's why we have some active recruitments and some inactive recruitments. It's just because of the number of staff we have. We happen to have more than we used to, but we also have more vacancies than we used to.
And I will say for some recruitments, particularly department head and above, department head, we've used GovHR or another consulting firm. So there's at times we do get outside consultants to help with recruitments.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Carol? Grace.
Thanks. I guess just one more, if you had any solutions or like light at the end of the tunnel, or ways people can support, like even us, posting some of the vacancies, or what would be the solution within the city and anything council could assist with?
Well, I think that there's the recruiting aspect of it, but there's also the retention aspect of it. And, I have mentioned in remarks that I've made on more than one occasion, and I said it again tonight, that, there's an atmosphere that exists at council meetings and elsewhere that there's a distrust of staff. And that and I also mentioned that people are talented and they have other options. And there's there's been a great kind of, this great resignation thing is real, and people are reevaluating, where they want to work, how much they want to work, the type of work they want to do. So when we, when we undermine the dignity of our employees by accusing them of incompetence, of unethical behavior without any actual factual basis being offered, that creates an environment where people are seriously reevaluating whether this is a place that they want to work. We, as I have said on other occasions, we need to be the employer of choice. We are competing with higher salaries in Champaign, and we need to be creating an environment that people say, yeah, that's where I want to work. I feel at home there. I feel that I'm part of a team. That work makes me feel good. And there's certain factions that are not helping to cultivate that environment. So anything you could do to help assist in cultivating an environment where people enjoy their work and are respected, that would be most helpful.
Absolutely. And as far as saying that, council is accusing staff of unethical or poor behavior, I think you're going to have to support that one if you get a chance, because that's not what I recall happening.
I didn't say council. I said during council, or I intended to say during council meetings and elsewhere. I didn't mean to say council members, if in fact that's what I said.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I appreciate having this conversation. I know many of us are facing this challenge in the community, and it certainly is helpful. And I would just again offer, if there are ways that we can help prepare things to make it a little bit easier on the staff, I at least would be more than happy to do so. In response to this, concern about changing staffing styles, and if this is not the time, feel free to say we can discuss that elsewhere or whatever. I'm curious if there have been any conversation about offering more flexibility in terms of working schedules or things like that, because I know that's something that has been discussed in other spaces in response to, you're right, a lot of people are evaluating, they've gotten used to working remotely, they don't really want to go back into the office, and so places that are able to offer that flexibility, in some cases, are seeing more success. So I'm just curious if that's something that's been discussed.
Yeah, I'll just briefly say that we have, we went from 0 to 60 with working remotely. We had 3 people capable of working remotely when COVID started, and now everybody whose job can be done remotely has been equipped to work remotely. And we have made I can't speak to every supervisor, but we have encouraged people to continue to allow for the flexibility of working remotely if the work can get done. So I think that we're really trying hard to address that and being as flexible as possible with our employees, especially ones with families.
I think that's worth highlighting, right? So just for folks who maybe are hearing their challenges and it's hard to work at Urbana, that's one of those things to lift up, not only the folks who are already doing a great job and they get to work with, but also the fact that, the folks who are supervising these roles are recognizing this is a different time, and there are some opportunities that might not have been there. So appreciate that.
Yep. Thank you.
That's one of the lessons learned from COVID, which will be one of the very positive legacies of this pandemic, is that there's many different ways to do the work, and people expect more flexibility and need more flexibility. So.
Well, and we've learned that we're more interested in the work getting done, not how it gets done.
And actually, I think people found they were more productive at home in many ways. So I think it's worked out. It's worked out. Any other questions for Carol? Well, if you know any good electricians, please send them our way. And we'll move on to Will Kolchowski, and he's our point of contact at the city who's working with the folks at the Regional Planning Commission planning the American Rescue Plan discussion and allocation of funds. So Will wanted to give you an update and a timeline.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll share my screen here since it's easier to look at a schedule as opposed to have me read it all to you. So I have just a quick update for everybody today. Just kind of timeline. We signed the contract with RPC last month. So the past couple of weeks, they've been kind of getting their head around it and kind of game planning and kind of putting the schedule in place. So I have the first slide I'll show you is just kind of an overview of the whole schedule. And then I'll go into a little bit more detail after that in the next slide with kind of how that relates to City Council and where you guys all fit into that schedule. So this is the general map of the game plan. There's really three main phases. There's the first phase, which is kind of the background research, developing the concept plan, and then the implementation plan. So this is, I kind of describe it as, what do we want to do? How are we going to do it? And then doing it. So for the first part, which is, collecting existing priorities, what the RPC is going to do is they're going to go through kind of all the comments made in the past, look at all of our existing plans, look at the ARPA funding requirements, because there are a fair amount of requirements behind it, and kind of, get the lay of the land, so to speak. And then, from there, kind of have develop an input plan for kind of to fill in the gaps where they think there needs to be some more input. So once we get all those inputs and discussion about the priorities, once we kind of finalize those priorities, that's where we develop the concept plan. So the concept plan is taking those priorities and figuring out, how are we going to do it? What are the goals we want to achieve? And kind of some of the funding process that we're going to take. And then from there, we'll solicit proposals, people will respond. And then in the fall, starting in fall 22 is when the city will review those proposals and start making some just decisions on where that money is going to go. So kind of how does that relate to council? And your input in the whole process throughout that schedule. There's really 4 main meetings. And when I say 4 main meetings, that doesn't include, brief updates like this. So, there's questions, you have RPC, there's always, there can still be a dialogue for smaller brief updates like this. And that also doesn't include the upcoming kind of council priority discussions. Those are broader picture priorities that will funnel into the public input in the public input phase. So the first meeting, which the RPC plans to have with City Council, is a presentation to Council talking about all the public input to date, kind of where the service gaps are. And from there, that'll be the transition from the existing input into the gathering of some new input about it. And then once they've gathered some new input, the final priorities will be presented to Council in a second meeting. And then once Council determines the final priorities that they want to achieve, RPC will take that direction and develop a concept plan, which then will be the third meeting, which will be Council approving the concept plan. Then once Council approves the concept plan, then it kind of goes into the implementation phase. And then during the implementation phase, I think it's still kind of nebulous, but at some point there will be a decision-making process with Council of deciding, where, assigning the dollars to particular projects or proposals. And that's kind of, the real brief rundown. The target date for the first meeting is the first quarter of 2022. I think the RPC is targeting January. And then for the second meeting, it'll be either, end of first quarter, beginning of second quarter next year. The third quarter of 2022 will be the third meeting. And then the fourth meeting, it kind of depends on, really what we get in, but I think the first quarter of 2023 is just kind of a placeholder at this point, and dependent on what we receive. So that's really kind of the high level overview. I don't know if any of you had particular questions about the schedule. I can go back to the previous screen if you want to read that.
Jay.
I believe you just answered my question, but when you're talking about the quarters, you're talking about quarters of the calendar year, not the fiscal year, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Grace?
So, okay, I'm gonna do a quick comment and a question. I appreciate the update on this and the intentionality in letting us know the plan. And I definitely agree with taking our time to a certain extent to be intentional and really thoughtful and informed in these decisions. I also balance that with the urgency of people needing money, you know, the rescue plan to recover from COVID stuff. So I appreciate the timeline, and I hope that we can work within that as well as possible and not all the way up until 2027. I know that's the final reporting and the last bit that it has to be spent, but I hope that we can keep those two aspects of balance in mind on this. My other question was, if you could help refresh my memory of the history of the rescue money, because so to my understanding, this looks like this ARPA money will have two payments. We've gotten one, the other one coming, and we have also received some rescue plan money in the past, over the past year and a half. If someone can answer if that's correct, and the spending on that one, if that's all spent.
So I believe the ARPA funds come in two installments. So out of the 12.9 million, the first chunk of change got deposited in that May date, and then the government withholds the second half of that 12.9 million until the second date here, which is next May. So out of that 12.9, to the best of my knowledge, none of that's been spent, and none of that, except for the contract with RBC, none of that will be spent until kind of that implementation plan phase where the decision is made of what projects to fund. And I mean, there's been a lot of other, grant funds out there, but those are, I'm not familiar with those, but those are kind of separate from this process.
Yeah. So was there additional federal money from COVID relief that Urbana received prior to this? And I know you will may not know, but if anyone else, or get back to me if not, but just in rewatching some meetings and stuff, I thought that had been brought up that there was, COVID rescue money from the federal government that has already been dispersed and spent. Is that correct?
Yes.
Hi, Grace. Hi, Grace. This is Sheila. Yes, we did get $689,000 in CDBG COVID funding, and that money is all committed and just about fully dispersed. And then we have another round that came through ARP in March when this money was approved. That is 2.9 million in home funding. And we are just getting the final rules on that, and we'll be meeting with community members to identify priorities, and we'll be bringing that to council at some point. That's the two pots of money that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. And the CDBG was, that's other grants, is that right? That went out to like small businesses and all that?
Yeah. Small businesses and some rent assistance, and First Followers got some money. Champaign County Healthcare Consumers got some money to help their clients during COVID. So it went to a few different areas.
And in addition to that would be the assistance to the business community that was processed by the Economic Development Department.
Right, and that funding came through the state of Illinois.
That was the DCEO.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like those were under specific things for other organizations, for grants or the home funding stuff. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question.
That all of those were kind of flagged for outside organizations, that it was the city dispersing it to other businesses or organizations?
Actually, the CDBG money we did an application process for, and so did Economic Development for theirs. We had specific guidelines we had to follow, but we did an open application process, and people were able to apply for it. The Emergency Solution Grant COVID funding, which is almost right at $300,000. That Urbana acted as the administrator, and then funds were allocated to Cunningham Township as well as CU at Home.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Diane, I have a quick question.
Yeah, I don't have everybody. Oh, hang on. Okay, go ahead.
I just was hoping, Will, can you email this to us, this document, so that we have, thank you.
And if you have questions, feel free to email Will with them, follow-up questions.
Yeah, I have, periodic meetings with the RPC, just kind of check in and see how they're doing. So, as you get them, send them in, and I'll try to get them answered to the best of my ability.
Okay, all righty. Is that it for the staff report, Carol? I think we got that covered.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. We'll move on to new business, and that includes mayoral appointments. First on the agenda is the appointment of City Engineer John Zeman. And I'm very pleased to submit for your approval the appointment of John Zeman. This would be effective October 25th, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. So his appointment would put him on the same timeline as the rest of the current appointed staff. And once we get closer to that deadline next year, we'll talk about the next phase. So John, you've received his summary of his qualifications a couple of weeks ago, but just to summarize, he's holds a Bachelor of Science in Civil and Environmental Engineering with a focus on transportation and structural engineering. He has a Master of Science in Civil and Environmental Engineering with a focus on structural, railroad, and construction materials, both from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He has 11 years of experience in all phases of transportation, capital improvement projects, and long-term preventive maintenance for public infrastructure, both of which we are in desperate need here in Urbana. So we're just delighted that he has chosen to work for Urbana. And during his interview, what struck me, one of the things that struck me the most about what he said was his desire to be in public service. He's been in private industry, the private engineering world most of his career, and he really has decided that public service is where he wants to be. So I'm gonna, Tim Cowan, I think may want to say a few things. Tim is our interim director of public works, soon to be appointed 2 weeks from now as director of public works, and he'll introduce John. Thank you, John, for being here.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, so we've been on the hunt for a city engineer for a while. It started probably before I even started as the interim role. So we've been on the hunt for quite some time for this. We were very pleased when we got John's application and excited to interview him. And then through the interview process, he just had a breadth of knowledge that I think fits very well with what we need here for our team at the city engineering division. He's got a ton of applicable experience to what we do here. And I would just reiterate the same thing that the mayor had said is in the interview process, just John's desire to get into public service and kind of tie more meaning to what he's doing for him internally. And without further ado, I'll introduce everybody to John Zeman. I'll let him give a brief introduction of himself, and then all of you are more than welcome to ask questions.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Tim, for that. Good evening, Council, and it's an honor to be here, and very excited about this opportunity to serve the city and meet the staff and get to get my hands dirty with all the work there is to do. As Tim has been quick to point out, there's a lot of work to do, and so just thanks again. I appreciate all your time, and if anybody wants to know anything about me, I'll be happy to answer.
Any questions for John? Okay. Oh, Mary Alice.
I don't really have a question. I just would say we've been on the hunt for a city engineer for ever since Craig left. So I'm really happy that the city is been able to successfully recruit somebody. So John, hopefully the vote will go in your favor today and you'll be a new employee tomorrow morning. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary Alice.
Actually, it's October 25th. Grace, go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, John, welcome. And thank you for your willingness to serve the city in this role. Definitely an engineer is an important one. I had some questions, not for John, unfortunately, but for maybe Mayor or Carol on just also a point of clarification with the term of appointment. I appreciate that you mentioned it verbally here, but I just was kind of under the impression with the code update that would be a little more official than like a verbal announcement at the time of the appointment. So yeah, I think that having, prior notice of the term ending date would be helpful in writing, like in the packet and all that kind of stuff. And then I also just was wondering, Carol, if you could clarify, did you say that the assistant city engineer we're planning on hiring is a woman with a PhD?
Yes, I did.
And could you explain, just looking on paper, why the higher education is in the assistant role? And again, nothing personal, if you could just explain your rationale here to me.
I'm not prepared to do that right now, but I'd be happy to do that offline.
Thank you.
Any other questions for John? Okay. Could I have a motion then to approve the appointment of John Zeman as city engineer for a term beginning October 25th, 2021 to June 30th, 2022?
I'll move that we appoint John Zeman from October 25th, 2021 to June 30th, 2022 as the city engineer.
Second.
Okay, further discussion? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Present.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
Okay, that motion is approved. Congratulations, John, and thank you. And we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
All right, the last item on the agenda is the appointments to the Urbana Arts and Culture Commission. And these are effective immediately through June 20th, 2024. And those, a summary of each candidate was included in your packet, but I would like to formally appoint Sarah Buckman, who's a UIUC graduate, marketing manager at Common Ground Food Co-op. She's a local food and culinary arts educator who knits, paints, enjoys taking food photography. She serves as community liaison between numerous active local organizations and is very interested in assisting Urbana Arts and Culture Commission with future arts and cultural programming. Heather Rose is an educator and healer. She's the mother of two youth, Sabrina 16 and Zachary 12. I'm sorry, Sabrina and Zachary. She's a known activist within the community as a poet, broadcaster, and occasional painter. She's an alum of Eastern Illinois and has a degree in community health and a master's degree in health promotion and leadership. She's made it plain and clear while working with formerly incarcerated individuals and youth that she offers everyone a safe place and envisions a holistic approach when it comes to education and wellness. Howard Shine, or Howie Shine, as most of us know him, has called Urbana home for over 54 years, and he's been a longtime advocate for the arts and community organizing locally. For 35 years, he was program director of Unit 1 at Allen Hall, which is an arts-based living learning community. He served as adjunct associate professor of higher education. He's been active in local community work, including mentoring through CU 1-to-1, Urbana Middle School, Urbana High School, and the U of I's I Promise program. He's served as a court-appointed special advocate, neonatal intensive care volunteer, and a Park District swim coach. He's currently on the Urbana Park District Advisory Committee, Eastern Illinois Food Bank's Public Policy Engagement Committee. He's also a studio potter and is the owner of Howie Shine Pottery. And then the final appointee for the Arts Commission is Blair Ebony Smith. She's a strong advocate for arts and culture engagement. She's assistant professor of art education and gender and women's studies at the U of I. She was prior to joining the faculty, she was a postdoctoral research associate in art education with Krannert Art Museum, where she curated Homemade with Love, More Living Room, which is a multimedia, publicly engaged installation exploring the everyday interior life and creativity of Black women, girls, and femmes. Yep, is it femme or femme? Okay, we'll find out. Femme, okay. I'm used to the French. Her past experience includes being program coordinator of the Urbana-Champaign Independent Media Center, where she was a core organizer of Open Scene, sponsored by the National Endowment for the Arts grant obtained jointly with the City of Urbana Arts and Culture Program. Her curatorial and artistic practice is focused on Black girl celebration, Black feminist poetics, sound, art, and design. She had her PhD, obtained her PhD from Syracuse University in Cultural Foundations of Education. So I would entertain a motion for the appointment of Sarah Buckman, Heather Rose, Howie Shine, and Blair Ebony Smith to the Urbana Arts and Culture Commission, effective immediately through January 20th, 2024.
I move to appoint Sarah Buckman, Heather Rose, Howard Shine, and Blair Ebony Smith to the Urbana Arts and Culture Commission, effective immediately through June 20th, 2024.
Second.
I'm sorry, who was first? I missed that. Chris?
Either one, Grace or Jaya, you could pick for second. I don't know.
It might have been a tie, so whoever's more convenient.
Go ahead, Jay. I think I heard your voice softly. Second by Jay. Any further discussion? Chris?
Yeah, just real quickly, I wanted to thank the mayor and probably Rachel Storm for compiling this roster of people. I know 3 of them, and I can tell you that this is a very strong, all these people bring a lot to the table and will really strengthen our Public Arts Commission. So thanks for doing this.
Welcome. And all credit goes to Dr. Rachel Storm, who is an astonishing, I don't even know the word. She's just astonishing in all that she does. And I'm really pleased with how she's taken the Public Arts and Culture program and expanded it beyond anyone's, all expectations. So, all right, well, with no further discussion, unless anyone else wants to say anything. All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
I think Grace is trying to say something, Diane.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Just real quick, one to also say thanks for the information and appreciate the diversity and, you know, the quality of the candidates for this.
Thank you. All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin.
Yes.
That motion passes. And with no further business before the council, we are adjourned. Thank you. Good night.